lots of discussions, lots of good papers or in the oral and the poster sessions. And today we have the session on humans in Quaternary and fossils, records in Quaternary, along with Quaternary landscape evolution. And to moderate this session is Dr. Anjum Farooqui from Bibulsani Institute of Paleosciences and Dr. Parth Chauhan from IISER Mohali. I would not take much time, and I welcome ma'am to please moderate the session and start the proceedings. Thank you.
A very good morning to all of you. Well, today's session starts with the keynote address, which will be delivered by Professor Rajiv Patnaik. And now I ask Dr. Parth Chauhan to introduce and say a few words about Dr. Parth, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anjum. It gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce Professor Patnaik. Dr. Rajiv Patnaik is a professor in the Department of Geology at Punjab University, where he has also served as a chairperson in the recent past. He earned all of his academic degrees from the same department, including a PhD in 1993. Thus far in his illustrious career, Professor Patnaik has contributed towards understanding of the evolution of some Indian mammals and their paleoecology, including the geological context of primate human evolution and the impact of climate change on faunal evolution. Over the years, he has adopted a multidisciplinary approach, including such methods as stable isotopes, dental microwear, microstructure, cladistics, and so forth, to address specific issues or research questions concerning neogene quaternary climatic conditions, mammalian ecology, diet, biogeography, chronology, and evolution. For instance, he has also gradually established a robust biostratigraphy for the Shivalik Hills based on micromammal fossils and has contributed significantly towards understanding of the evolution of marine rodents to reconstruct paleomonsoonal conditions. He has also been involved in the cladistic analysis of the Narmada Valley hominin cranium, the only known early hominin fossil found from the entire Indian subcontinent till date, showing a closer relationship with the European Steinheim specimen. Later, using various methods including ESR dating and geomorphological observations, he demonstrated that this famous and much debated hominin fossil from central India was contextually reworked, thus having major implications on previous chronological interpretations. I am proud and privileged to have been a collaborator with him on that work, when we did much of the fieldwork along the Narmada River banks with the help of a boat. From the Kurnool caves in southern India, he and his colleagues found that the disappearance of several vertebrate taxa was probably due to a very arid phase of the last glacial maximum, or the LGM. In addition, he and his colleagues have discovered new hominoid and primate species, ostrich-like eggshells, new pelican and darter fossils from the Shivalik Hills, also late Cretaceous rice from central India, and Miocene mammals from the Baripada beds of Odisha, as well as quaternary fossils and stone tools from that region. He has done extensive fieldwork and lab work in Egypt, USA, Germany, France, Australia, and Japan, and received numerous research grants and fellowships from such prestigious agencies as CSIR, DST, IGC, MOE, National Geographic Society, Leakey Foundation, Wennergren Foundation, DOD, and NSF. Needless to say, he also has over 100 scientific publications in various national and international journals and other academic platforms, including co-editor of a volume in press for the Vertebrate Paleobiology and Paleoanthropology series by Springer Press. Also, he has been or is a guest editor and associate editor for the major journals such as Current Science, Journal of the Geological Society of India, Quaternary International, and Journal of Human Evolution. In 2016, he was awarded the prestigious National Geoscience Award by the Honorable President of India. And in 2019, he was elected a Fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences. In addition to his vast professional accomplishments, many people may not know that he is not only a very jovial, helpful, and inspiring person by nature, but he's also a wonderful artist. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Patnaik to give, for this first IQC, an exciting keynote lecture entitled Influence of Climate Change on the Diet of Fossil Proboscideans. Thank you. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Professor Parth. Now I invite
Thank
Professor
you, Parth.
Rajiv
Hello. Thank you, Parth, for nice introduction. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I request you to deliver
Okay.
your talk.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I just thank all the organizers for giving me this chance to interact with you all. And I see Professor Vasan, Professor Kale, Professor Singhvi, all my seniors, and I thank you all for joining this lecture. And now I'm going to share.
We cannot see the screen as
You
yet.
cannot see. Okay. I don't know.
Share the fifth tool from the lower toolbox.
Yeah, I'm trying
Yeah.
that. Are you able to see this?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's uploading. Yeah,
Okay,
fantastic.
okay, okay. Thank you. So, you know, uh, this talk is about climate change on the diet of fossil proboscideans. Just to give you a brief idea what proboscideans are, basically mammals with proboscis, that is the trunk, which you can see here. And when you look at the overall evolution of this very amazing, fantastic mammal, uh, uh, from a small Moeritherium, sort of a small, tiny animal to giants like the steppe mammoths and African elephants. So, how do proboscideans help us in understanding uh, the climate, the ecology of the Neogene, the Quaternary, vis-a-vis the diet and all? So, overview of this talk of mine is how do we know what we know about ancient diet of mammals. So I will just briefly introduce how we go about understanding the diet and ecology. Then where did proboscideans origin, how they evolved and how they got dispersed uh, uh, all over the globe uh, as the climate changed. Then I'll take up some case studies that were done in Africa, in North America, and most importantly, India, in Asia, in India, which we have done so far, and which we are doing, and finally, concluding remarks. So, how do we know about these ancient animal diets? You see, when we look at the teeth, teeth are the ones which get fossilized and remain unaltered for millions of years. So when I showed you the first slide, I showed you this very tiny little animal called Moeritherium, which had very small snout, small trunk. And so from Miocene onwards, from in fact from Eocene onwards, there has been a gradual evolution of the teeth of these animals. So when we look at the teeth, to begin with, they were kind of cuspid, small, cusp-like teeth. They had small cusps, not many plates. And as we move on towards recent times, they became bigger in size, and a lot of these horizontal plates, as you can see, uh, 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 became more prominent. Now, it has something to do with the diet, because a mammal that eats leaves or fruits usually have bunodont, small cusps, or flat teeth. But mammals that that graze a lot have these uh, ridge-like, loaf-like teeth. So we, in fact, figure out the height of the crown when we look at the geological history from almost in the Cenozoic time period. This is just to show you. This is a horse teeth, not an elephant teeth, but I've just shown you elephant, how they look. The elephant teeth look like. So this is a low crown teeth of a horse, and there's a high crown teeth. Now, high crown teeth are basically meant for grazing. If it gets weathered, eroded, some part of the tooth will remain till the animal becomes old. So as we see overall picture, to begin with, the ancestor of horse, uh, and likewise the ancestor of elephants, they were mostly browsers. They used to thrive on leaves. They used to live in forests. And as we move on towards the Miocene, climate changed, which brought about change in the ecology of the area, all over the world, in fact. And that led to high crown teeth, that led to formation of high crown teeth. So this is one way in which we can figure out. So we, in fact, this is a very quantitative study. We count the hypsodonty index, which is basically the length of the tooth versus the width, or sometimes height of the tooth. And people have been able to find out the precipitation with the hypsodonty index. So if an area that receives a lot of precipitation, there would be more forests, and you would find more mammals with low crowned bunodont, as we call, teeth. Where the conditions are arid, there you would find high crowned teeth, mammals with high crowned teeth. And another factor which can be another way procedure which is followed is microwear. So when a mammal, or when we eat something, it leaves scratches and pits on our tooth enamel. So 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 if there are a lot of scratches, that means the animal is a grazer. If there are a lot of pits, or if the enamel is smooth, then the animal is a browser, that is a leaf that thrives on leaves and fruits. So if you can count those number of scratches and number of pits on an enamel surface, you can figure out if the mammal was a browser or was a grazer. So they would fall in these domains. In a section, we, in fact, we paleontologists will look at not only one mammal, but a group of mammal, which we call assemblage. So if we have a lot of browser in an assemblage, we sort of reconstruct that area was a kind of a forest. Likewise, grasslands, we can figure out from the scratches and pits. Another way to look at is mesowear. So enamel, if it is worn, the cusps are not there, cusps become blunt, So you'll find the mammals which are grazers, they have blunt cusps, and the ones which are browsers, they have pretty sharp cusps. So the people have been able to use this very effectively to reconstruct past ecological conditions. Now I move on to the important aspect of isotopes. Now, as we all know, what we eat, what we drink, it goes into our system, and while our teeth are being formed, the carbon isotopes and oxygen isotopes become a part of that enamel, that teeth. So basically, our enamel is made up of calcium phosphate, and biochemists and geochemists, we look for the oxygen isotopes attached to phosphates or carbonates, and carbon isotopes were attached to carbonates. So that gives an idea about the diet. Now, just to briefly explain that from atmosphere, uh, plants extract carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, and we have C3 plants and C4 plants and xerophytic plants, CAM plants. So uh, because of photosynthesis, the carbon gets fractionated, and it can be represented in the form of delta C13. So delta C13 values in the leaves of C3 plants or leaves of grasses, C4 plants, give us an idea about the pathways they follow. And when these plants are consumed by mammals such as elephants, that gets further fractionated because of metabolism, and that gets reflected in the enamel as well. So we can very well distinguish a fossil mammal uh, enamel, a mammal which is a grazer from a browser, or if it is a mixed feeder, based on the delta C13 values. Likewise, people have been able to study elephants in the modern elephants. So modern elephants, we have the Elephas maximus, which lives in India and South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the African elephant, Loxodonta africana. There is another species as well, that is a forest elephant. This is a bush elephant, and people have been figure out, they have been studying their enamel to know what kind of diet they have. So these days, mostly, as you can see, the Asian elephants as well as the African elephants, they are browsers. But in the past, uh, there has been a lot of changes in their diet because of, again, because of ecological change, which were influenced by the climate. Uh, so we can in fact study their tooth enamel in a bulk, as well as we can do some serial sectioning. Now, why serial sampling, not sectioning, serial sampling? That gives us an idea about the diet of an animal that lived for many years, and that while the tooth was growing, that tooth preserves the dietary changes in seasonal behavior, in dietary shifts during various seasons. So what we did, this is a Elephas maximus tooth collected from Mudumulai forest, and this study we have done to understand the diet of the present day elephant, so that we can apply it to the past elephants. And again, to look at the niche partitioning, we have used not only elephants, but other mammals as well from Mudumalai. Again, this is to basically use the data for comparison with the ancient fauna. This is further to just to give you an idea that what kind of composition you would expect if a mammal is living in a closed canopy, or it's an open canopy, or in the savanna, and which of course has a correlation with the rainfall pattern. Oxygen isotopes, of course, they are very important for understanding the climate, rainfall of an area, and as elephants are obligate drinkers, their enamel reflects the rainfall pattern or the isotopes of that very area. So uh, uh, this is a study which was done to find out what kind of isotope values, oxygen isotope values, you would expect in lakes and lowland streams and mountains and all. So one would expect to find such signatures in a tooth as well. Now, this is a section of an elephant tooth from Africa. Uno et al. Have studied that. Now, one can get a very high resolution data. Now you see there are these samples have been taken, and these are radiocarbon dated locations in just one tooth, and they have been able to figure out that there was there a drought, or what kind of rainfall were there during the last 20-25 years. So such sort of resolution is possible if you have a very good, very well preserved teeth. And one can actually count not only annual rainfall, but if we have if one applies laser ablation, one can actually count these are daily secretions of enamel. So daily, weekly, monthly, one can I mean, sky is the limit, depending upon the type of instrumentation you have. Uno et al. Have tried this on tusks, and beside, of course, teeth and molars. We have tusks are basically incisors, so one can get a very high resolution data. And they have been trying to correlate with rainfall patterns uh, uh, in Africa. Now, just to briefly give you an idea where elephants originated and how they migrated. So when we look at the scenario some 65 million years ago, India was an island, and so was Africa. And it is said that a molecular study suggests that proboscideans, elephants, are afrotheers. So they originated on this very continent, and then they migrated outwards. So the elephants we have in India are basically, their origin is in Africa. So this is a very famous chart by Zakos. I won't go into detail, but everybody knows how the climate has changed over the past 70 odd million years, and that has led to the spread of grasslands. Uh, so while Africa was an island, these were the elephant taxa which sort of evolved there. So one of the taxa I have talked about is Moeritherium, and in fact I have worked in Egypt and found some Moeritherium myself. So uh, till the early Miocene, all these elephants were confined to Africa, and once they got once Africa got attached to Eurasia, and this is a Moiri theorem I found myself. Once it got attached, these elephants came out of Africa and they started moving into Asia, Europe, and finally to North America. So by 15 million years, they reach North America, and by early Miocene, somewhere around 20 odd million years, they reach South Asia. So this is late Burdigalian, when all these mammals, these mammoths, these elephants, they get an opportunity to move out of Africa. So we are mostly concerned about the ones which reach India and Southeast Asia. Other mammals include hyraxes and pangolins, and in the reverse direction, these rodents and carnivores and artiodactyls, they got an opportunity to move into Africa. Further, same different elephants moving into South Asia, Europe, North Asia, and finally to America. So there has been many migration events depending upon the availability of food resources, climatic condition, and tectonic conditions. So whenever there was, the Bering Strait got attached because of sea level fall, uh, 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 these elephants got an opportunity to move into North America. So I'll touch upon some of the case studies. In Africa, Lister and his colleagues have carried out studies on African elephants, because before the Miocene, most of the elephants were browsers, and as we move on into Miocene, and as grassland started expanding, a lot of them shifted to grazing, but not all of them. These Lister and his group have found that though there was a shift from being from browsing to grazing, as you can see, uh, that's the enamel delta C13 values record in Africa, but there was a lag. Means the hypsodonty uh, developed slowly. Before the hypsodonty could develop, they had to start grazing. In fact, there was a lag between morphological change and dietary changes in Africa. And this is from Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, Pushpa Nigram and her team have been able to figure out how climate and ecological changes have influenced the diet of these elephants. They have also looked at the niche partitioning. So there are a variety of elephants that includes stegodons, the mighty Paleoloxodon, and the Elephas, relatives of Elephas. So a lot of data have been generated from Southeast Asia. And now I move on to the data we have been working on. Now these are the sites: early Miocene, middle Miocene, late Miocene, Pliocene, early Pleistocene, middle Pleistocene sites from where mammals have been recovered. Not all these sites contain elephants, but mammals, and most of these sites have elephants as well. So this is the Shivalik terrain from where we have collected the samples, and when we look at the stratigraphy, chronologically we have covered almost last 15 million year record, and we have also tried serial sampling of these mammals, these elephants, and this is from Kutch, and we are carrying out work in Kutch Miocene these days. So we have a variety of mammals, including elephants like Dinotherium and Gomphotherium. And this study is being done, and some data has been generated. So when we look at Kutch today, and we go back in time in Kutch, so it was a lush green habitat with a variety of mammals living. So one can get a lot of data from these mammals, particularly elephants, which allows us to understand the past ecological conditions and climatic conditions. If the data is if you have high resolution data, then you get a better idea. And this is from our own work, where we have seen that in India, when we look at the elephants, we see that the middle Miocene, till the middle Miocene, things were browsers, and as we move on towards the late Miocene, they become grazers, and suddenly they shift from grazing to browsing. So I would conclude by saying that dental enamel is an excellent archive to understand diet and environment of extinct mammals, particularly like the elephants. And moreover, if you can get intra-tooth variability data, this stable oxygen and carbon isotope concentrations, one can get interseasonal variability in paleo diet and paleoecological data. So I would thank the IQC team for this opportunity, and thank you all for attending, for listening to my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajiv Patnaik, for this enlightening talk. And I think our director wants to ask. I think it's very.
Yeah, Rajiv, it's a really nice presentation, lecture. I enjoyed. And just one
Thank you.
thing I just wanted to know, because you said that elephants they evolved in Africa during at 65 million years ago.
Yeah.
So, because there are some reports of dispersal pathways between India and Africa, Khoistan, Ladakh.
Right.
So what do you think that if these pathways were there, so wouldn't it be possible that some of the elephants they could have migrated to India during late Cretaceous time period, or is it because of a filter pathway? What do you say?
Yes, in fact, there is a possibility, but we have not found anything from the Eocene or Oligocene. So the first elephants we find in India are from the early Miocene. So there is no evidence as such, and only when Africa gets sort of attached to the Eurasia, we see such a thing.
Yes, Dr. Rajiv Saraswat.
Raju, very interesting presentation. I mean, I learned a lot about the proboscideans and especially using their isotopic ratios. I'm just curious, like, what is the growth rate of the, say, molars and the incisors in different proboscideans? It's like few millimeters and here, or how does it change?
Growth rates, well, I mean, they grow daily. till yeah, the incisors, they grow. There is a daily record of growths in the
Is it
incisor.
like millimeters daily, or how much
Pardon?
might it be? How
Pardon?
much it might be? Like, is it like few millimeters
Oh,
per day?
yeah. Few microns. Few
Okay.
microns. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And second thing, I do see a large spread in the carbon isotopic composition as compared to its oxygen isotopic composition of the tooth. Is it because they feed upon a variety of vegetation, or why the difference in the spread in oxygen and carbon isotopic ratios?
Oh yes, there is every possibility that the feeding ecology, their diet remains almost stable for a period of time. But oxygen isotope depends upon the drinking, the water they are drinking, or the leaves or the grass they are eating. It that reflects the seasonality. Uh, that could be the reason why we have a stability in the diet for a time period, and then it changes just in case they shift in their diet.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, Professor Singhvi.
I was a bit curious about you mentioned about drought in one of your slides.
Oh yes,
Now,
yeah.
so I wanted to know for elephants, what is the
Yeah,
meaning of drought in terms of rainfall changes? And given that they have a short lifespan,
yeah.
will there be significant ecological changes in that? You talk about ecology eventually.
Yeah.
So how do you link up a short-term event on a short-lived species to a long-term ecological uh, uh, changes?
Yeah, see, overall, if for instance, if we have a population that is living in a grassland, so if that very climatic condition supports grasslands, then you would find uh, almost a stable sort of uh, delta C13 values, as well as if the there is not much seasonal variation in water intake, that would also be not much variable. But just in case there is a drought, that gets reflected in the sense of the water intake, because that would sort of change. I mean, the work I have shown, I have referred this from one of the work by Uno et al., who worked in Africa. They found that when during the drought time period, they saw a shift in the oxygen isotope values, a big shift, almost by 4 part per mil. So they could correlate this big shift during that period of time, because the tooth, these incisors, they can't grow continuously for many years, and so they represent, they can represent that time period. But in case of teeth, the molars usually do not grow for a very long period of time, 5 years or maybe 10 years, but incisors, they can grow for many years. Am I able to, I don't know,
We
I
can
can
talk. We can talk.
yeah,
We
yeah,
can
yeah,
talk.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, just last short question from Dr. Pradeep now. You want to ask
Sir,
something?
namaste. This is Pradeep.
Hello, Pradeep. Hello.
Hello, sir. My question was that large part of the world, has reported mid-Pleistocene or Pleistocene mammalian extinction.
Yeah.
Why how could India escape, or Indian subcontinent escape to this? What is your take on this?
Advait is the right person. He's smiling. He would be able to
Okay.
explain this to you very well. So,
has a
so I would request you to get in touch with Advait. He's the one who is working on mega faunal extinctions. So he would be able to give you a better answer, I would suppose.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah,
I'll look
yeah,
forward to
yeah.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, thank
Thank
you.
you all. Thank you all. We are already ahead of time,
Yeah,
so we'll begin with the session now. And others, you can directly contact to Professor Rajiv Patnaik for questions if you have
sure,
any. And
sure.
now this session begins, which is on humans in Quaternary and fossil records from Quaternary. We have 8 presentations in this session. And the first one, Vaishnavi will present, which is on evidences and cultural attributes of human in Quaternary era, a case study of Matt Pimpey from Bhima Basin, Ahmednagar, Maharashtra. So please, Vaishnavi, are you there? You begin with your
Yes, ma'am.
presentation.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. I'll just share my slide. Is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vaishnavi. I work as an assistant in Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, Pune. My topic of presentation is Evidences and Cultural Attributes of Humans in Quaternary Era, a case study of Mutt Pimpri from Bhima Basin, Ahmednagar, Maharashtra.
Okay. Please make
Introduction.
it quick.
Yes, ma'am. Mutpimpri is a pre- and proto-historic cultural site which is located on latitude 17° 45 minutes north and longitude 75° 15 minutes east.
Vaishnavi, please make it full screen.
Vaishnavi, we are not able to see a second slide, and please make it full screen.
A slideshow?
Slideshow, yeah.
It is slideshow. Wait.
Oh, but I think we are not getting. So if you want to speak like this, then you have to select the slide. Yeah, now it's going to the second slide.
No, still.
Now it's going.
No, but you're still in the.
It's still in the slide format, not the full screen format.
But
Why is it so?
Okay.
Is it now?
You continue because
time is short. You continue, please.
In the screen share.
if you
Is
share
it
your
now
entire
visible?
No.
No?
Actually, did you share your entire screen or window?
Window.
Yeah. Please share the entire screen and then go ahead.
Okay, sir.
For the other presenters also, please share your entire screen so that we don't lose time and
Is it now
uploading
visible, ma'am?
And please go to the.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so it's Mutpimpri is a pre- and proto-historic cultural site, and it is located on the left bank of obtuse meander of Sina River, 25 kilometers away from Ahmednagar district headquarters, and it's accessible from Rui Chattisi, which is a weekly marketplace on Ahmednagar-Solapur highway. And this is the location of Mutpimpri. Here it is, and this is the Bhima River basin. Detail about the site. So this geoarchaeological excavation at Mutpimpri was undertaken as part of ICSSR New Delhi sponsored program under the direction of Dr. P.D. Sable. And the aims and objectives of the study: to reconstruct the paleo-environmental conditions prevailed before, during, and after the formation of the site, to study the quaternary environment of the Sina River basin, to understand the stratigraphical succession right from the deposition of hard rock, to study paleo-flood activity in the basin, to reconstruct the cultural development and settlement patterns. This is the relief study by using the GPS contours. So the site was excavated in 3 localities. This is locality 1, 2, and 3. Schematic diagram showing Oxbow and at Mutpimpri. So this is the Sena River, which is flowing, and this is the Paleo Channel, and they are the three localities. Vertical section of Matpimpri. So this site has produced fourfold cultural sequences. So period 1 is the medieval, early medieval period. Period 2, early historic, which dates back to Satavahanas. And period 3 is the flood log deposits. Period 4 is of Holocene and Pleistocene deposits with Mesolithic tools, which rest on rocky foundation of Deccan trap basalt. So to uh, understand the detail of each deposit, separate three steps-like trenches were taken and named as per the order of superposition of stratigraphy rule from bottom to top. Therefore, bottommost, this is named as locality 1, and this is the Quaternary deposit locality. This is locality 2, named as flood deposit, and this is locality 3, named as the habitation deposit. And this is the stratigraphy of the modern deposits. So we found the medieval stone structures and also some flood deposits, black cotton, natural soil. This is locality 3 or the habitation site, the topmost layer. Here we found the agricultural deposits and some of the potsherds, whitish colored clay. Uh, yeah. And then this is the locality 2, which is the flood deposits. So here we found the black cotton soil intermixed with calcareed grain at the base, and also the compact black cotton soil with the calcareed sandy silty clay as well. This is locality 1, which is the Quaternary period. Deposits are also found here, and yeah. This is some of the Pleistocene fossiliferous and the microliths that were found, because at the Quaternary deposit we have found many fossils and what the microlith tools here. So these are some of the fossils that we have discovered excavated from here. Like we have the equid, Bos nomadicus, and cattle, buffaloes fossils have been found. And these are some of the observations made from the experts. So we had experts from geoarchaeology, from chemistry. So this is the cultural deposits. And yeah, we found the potsherds, the potteries of mostly the red wares and some of the microliths, the flakes. They are the pottery and the stone objects. We found the saddle and quern as well. This is the well section at Ruichatisi, which is a weekly market near Matpimpri. And conclusion. So, as stated above, Matpimpri, it is a unique site which is settled in between two channels of Sena River due to the highly suitable landscape conditions. So, the sediment samples which were collected from each stratigraphic layer from three different localities, they were taken for various lab analysis to understand the depositional sedimentary environment and ultimately to reconstruct the paleoenvironmental conditions of the Sena Basin. And so some of the studies or the samples that were collected, like the sedimentary samples, they were collected to analyze the size, shape, roundness, sphericity, to understand the source of sediment, fossil at the different depositional environment. And then the remote sensing and aerial photograph of this area were also done to understand the topographical and geomorphic suitability of this region. And also petrographical studies of the artifacts were also done to understand the source, that is from where they belong to. Was it local or from outside? And also the catchment analysis of the area was done for the 10-kilometer radius. And pollen and archaeobotanical assemblages of the samples were also collected. And some other pottery samples were also collected and taken to the lab. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Just one quick short question, if any. Anyone will raise hand? No. Okay. We'll continue with another presentation, which will be given by Yadav Ankit on long-term natural and anthropogenic forcing on aquatic system, evidence based on biogeochemical process. Please, Yadav Ankit, continue with your presentation.
Yeah, it's visible.
Is it visible? Yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am. So good morning to all. Myself, Ankit. I'm a final year PhD student at IISER Mohali. So at IISER Mohali, we actually primarily work on aquatic environments. And we focus on one particular part of this lacustrine environment, and that is the different biogeochemical proxies, which actually governs the overall sedimentary organic matter budget related to the different environmental and climate variability. So yeah, so today I'm going to talk about one specific lake which is situated in Kashmir Himalayas. So we collectively work on the Himalayan lakes, but for today's talk I'll be mainly focusing on the Ahansar Lake. Now, why do we decide to focus on this particular area? So the reasons could be listed as, like, from our group only, Dr. Praveen Kumar Mishra in 2015 and 2018 actually clearly illustrated that there were some large-scale climate fluctuations in this area, and whatever the precipitation regime is present there is very contrasting in nature if we compare it to the core monsoon zone. So the claims are reported very well in the Mishra et al. 2015 and 2018. And further, if we talk about Anthropocene, we all know that there have been a continuous population expansion. Like, we have crossed 600 crores as of now, and India is no short of such population explosion. If I say, we are leading the market, and how these population expansion is actually taking the toll on the overall organic matter budget, which is there in the lacustrine environment. So, for example, if we talk about Anthropocene, so the use of phosphorus and nitrogen has increased almost 100 times. And as a result of this continuous dumping of nitrogen and phosphorus into the aquatic environments, many of the lakes, if I say based on these observations by Anderson et al. In 2020, he analyzed approximately 520 lakes from the different geographical locations, mainly the temperate regions. And he stated that because of this excessive nutrient loading, these lakes have, crossed that particular tipping point, or you can say that threshold, or one can specifically say that these are the regime shifts which these lakes have gone through. Now, are these regime shifts basically because of all the anthropogenic activities? No, the answer is no. So Prasad et al. In 2020 showed that the different extrinsic climate variables also facilitates or governs the organic matter dynamics, and clearly stating that depending on the different geographical location based on the Zomorari and Lonar Lake, which are situated at two different geographical locations and receive a completely different precipitation regime. So they clearly stated that depending on the different teleconnections, these systems behaves completely differently. So inspired by these two attributes, we decided to reconstruct and understand the organic matter budget dynamics in Ahansar Lake and understand what is happening there and what is the causal mechanism. So to do so, we retrieved 13 core from the Ahansar Lake by keeping the following objectives in my mind. The first one was to, understand the composition and distribution of sedimentary organic matter in the lake basin itself, and then apply the same methodologies to the core sediments, and understand if there is any potential anthropogenically induced regime shift, or is it a climate induced regime shift. So these were the objectives which we kept in our mind. Now, the first task was to actually generate the chronology. So we did some radiocarbon dates, but unfortunately, these radiocarbon dates were not stratigraphically consistent. Then what we opted for lead-210 and 137 cesium datings. And we constrained the chronology for the last 200 years. Now, with this presentation, I would like to emphasize on one point, and that is specific to the chronological methods which one have to opt in the Kashmir lakes. So we observed, not for our one lake, but for the other lakes, that the radiocarbon dates are stratigraphically always inconsistent. So whenever one is dealing with the lakes from the Kashmir Himalaya, the researchers should emphasize on multiple dating techniques. So that is the one keynote which one can take from this slide. Then, having constrained the chronology, now the next part, how we are going to apportion the state and the source of organic matter, which is there in the lake basin and the core sediment, for which we chose the different hydrocarbons, in specific aliphatic hydrocarbons, then the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and the polar fractions. In conjunction with, we also analyzed one additional biomarker approach, which is the amino acids. So whenever one is dealing with the source composition, the researcher always not focus on the what is the state of that organic matter, whether that is freshly derived organic matter or whether that is, decomposed or degraded organic matter. So based on amino acid analysis, we first get to know that whatever the sediments which are present in the core sediments or the fresh surface sediments are basically fresh in nature. So that we did based on the amino acid analysis. And then we applied our molecular approach, and in specific, some of the species-specific biomarkers were also analyzed, like Botryococcus broni-induced botryocoquines. Then you have the highly branched isoprenoids. So all these are very specific to the periphyton communities, freshwater algae, which could be the indicator of eutrophication. So after which, we first tried to assess the overall composition of source of the organic matter in the core sediments based on some conventional proxies. And we witnessed, yes, there is a shift from mixed organic content, which was primarily driven by the aquatic macrophytes or the terrestrial material. Now this material is being changed by the phyton communities, or you can say the phytoplankton communities or different microbial communities. So there is a continuous increase in that particular community. Now, all this is a qualitative approach. Now, how to do the quantitative approach? So as I initially stated that you have some species-specific biomarkers. So for example, this chromatogram illustrates information on the one particular biomarker, that is the C20 highly branched isoprenoids, which are very specific to the diatom communities. So as you can see here that in the lower part, there was no signature of HBI, and in the upper part, you have a huge peak of HBI, which states that, yes, the phyton communities are getting enriched, their abundance is getting enriched, and that we deciphered based on this chromatographic results. Now we further analyze the compositional variation in amino acids. Now one would wonder that you have approximately 10 to 15, temporal variation of different amino acids. So there are some shifts in some of the amino acids. For example, here you can see a clear shift. Then here also you can see a clear shift. So how to analyze that, whether we have a shift around 1930s or no shift? So for doing so, we do some statistical analysis. So in specific, we calculated some dimensional scaling of amino acid assemblages as well as diatoms, and we correlated that to the nitrate and the amino concentrations which are present in the core sediments. Now, these two concentrations are directly dependent to the microbial activities, and we found out that yes, there is a particular tipping point, or there is a change in slope for all the proxies around that particular 1930 interval. Now, having all said, we have not discussed the mechanism by which this transition has happened. So now to understand that part, we analyze some of the fecal biomarkers, which are very characteristic to the human-induced perturbations and some grazing animals, or you can say household animals. So all these animals or humans contribute specifically to that particular sterols and bile acid composition. And in our results, we clearly see that there was a continuous rise in the coprostanol concentration, specifically if I talk about, and coprostanol is induced from the humans. So this was the results, or this was the mechanism which we tried to infer from our results, that yes, humans have continuously taken a toll on the aquatic ecosystems in the Kashmir Himalayas. And as the population is rising, these freshwater aquatic ecosystems are ultimately going to die and induce some harmful algal blooms, which will be very catastrophic for the aquatic communities. So these are the conclusions which we have drawn out of our 3 studies. That is the this sedimentary organic matter is characterized by an increase in accumulation of planktonic derived community. And we witnessed a common trajectory and timing of a potential regime shift, which is by the anthropogenic activities. And these regime shifts are actually very resilient, and one would not be able to change these regime shifts or cannot restore these aquatic ecosystems to their initial conditions. So overall, regular monitoring and suitable management policies must be there by the administrative people. So that is all. I thank the organizers. Thank you so much. And my supervisor, Dr. Anupambali, and my co-supervisor, Dr. Praveen Kumar Mishra. So if anyone wants to have any conversation or have any doubts, one can reach me to the mentioned email IDs, and regular updates for my work are given on my website, that is geoankit.weebly.com. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit, for this very interesting presentation. And I think people will contact you if any further questions are there. Now we continue with our next presentation, which will be given by Akash Srinivas.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
ma'am.
he will be presenting on slow accumulating palimpsests. What is this spelling?
Assessing.
Okay. Accessing its potential for characterizing pediment surface Paleolithic sites of South Asia. Okay,
Yes.
please continue.
Yes, ma'am. I'm assuming my screen is visible and I'm audible.
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect. So, good morning, everybody. So, I'll be talking about slow accumulating palimpsests and how we can probably use this paradigm to understand and study surface sites in South Asia. So, what are slow accumulating palimpsests? So, as defined, they are sites or localities which exhibit remains of many episodes of human activities which are accumulated over a stable surface where there are low rates of natural deposition leading to the extended exposure of such occupational surfaces. So this is a study on trying to understand how the original archaeological assemblages were formed and how that affects our interpretation of this thing. So the South Asian Paleolithic covers a long time period. Some of our earliest evidences come from around 2 million years, and there are sites that are spread all over India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. So a lot of the sites give us a lot of the information that we know is from surface accumulation sites. So we have a long historiography of research, and surface sites have contributed a lot to our understanding of the Paleolithic. I would like to also state that this project has been accepted by the Rewriting World Archaeology as one of the mentorship programs. So I'm thankful for all their assistance during for this paper. So various sites during field observations during my PhD noted that a lot of slow accumulating palimpsests could be present all over South Asia. So I'll be looking at Quaternary as a case study for trying to assess its applicability. So the site of Quaternary was discovered in 1922. It's located in the Mysore Plateau on the Southern Deccan Complex. It's an open-air site in a regolithic colluvial context at the foothills of the Banasandra Hills, and all the localities are recovered from within 1 kilometer of structural hills. The region is on something known as the 13-degree north water divide, so there are no large perennial sources of water here. And there are currently no absolute or relative days, but future research in this region will try and get some done. Artifacts are exposed in areas where the overlying fine sediments are eroded away, exposing the regolith or the colluvial deposit that has the artifacts. The archaeology has been classified as mode 2 or a Schulian. So the natural site formation processes we still see are primarily exfoliation and the associated regolithic and colluvial processes that happen on the surface. So what we can figure out is that there is a temporal compression at these sites. So when we reconstruct the stratigraphy, unit 2, which is highlighted here, is the entire Pleistocene archaeological record. So the last 2.5 million years is compressed into this 10-15 centimeter horizon, and this is something that we see throughout the entire archaeological complex. So which means to say that the entire time frame of human activity at this region has been compressed into a small stratigraphical space. So this leads to both vertical stratigraphy, as we noted, and a horizontal stratigraphy, wherein because of site various colluvial processes, different parts of the deposit are exposed, and at different times they're also buried. So contiguous areas can be contemporary, or they also could be temporarily distinct over we don't know how long, because we have to still get them dated. But we know that this colluvial deposit was there throughout throughout the Acheulean occupation, because we find the lower Paleolithic artifacts throughout the entire 15-20 centimeters of the archaeological horizon. So these sites are technically semi-primary sites, because while they don't preserve their actual point provenance of the artifacts, the general area provenance of the artifacts is preserved. And plus, this also questions the whole nature and dichotomy of a primary and secondary context, because site preservation is a spectrum, and looking at it dialectically is limiting. So as we see that these are active landscapes, although with a low rate of deposition. So there's an interplay between the regolith formation, colluvial formation, and if it is located near sources of river, even input of fluvial processes, which was noted at sites called like Mahadev Piplia in the Narmada Valley. So that is why post-depositional processes and even anthropogenic activities affected, because we see that even within the Acheulean record, we have evidences of the Neolithic and even Mesolithic occupations, which means that the same landscape was exposed throughout these times and used multiple times. So how modern day activities can affect the preservation. So for example, at present, the entire landscape is coconut plantations. And we know that the kind of work that we've done shown that in the last 100 years, there's a complete shift in the land use patterns in the region, and this has led to the recovery of the sites. So currently, when we have sites all over the hills, but in the 1920s, when the site was first discovered, it was only located at the northeastern slope, and this was correlated with the anthropogenic activities that was carried out. So as more of the activities has spread throughout the hill region, more of the record has been visibilized. So this shows that we have to acknowledge anthropogenic activities and its role in archaeological interpretation, as we saw here. And this also lets us be more careful when you're taking interpretations regarding technological variability, cultural assemblages, and translational assemblages, because if the same landscape has been exposed throughout time and resulting in the archaeological record that we see today, you will find artifacts from different time periods. So we will see that they're all mixed, and we'll interpret them as either being transitional or probably like a regional variant. So what we suggest is that we first assume all artifacts are mixed, but we still consider and treat them as one archaeological unit when we're studying them. Moreover, we need to move away from diagnostic and typological analysis of lithic elements to look at all the lithic elements, as well as integrate various other methods such as functional analysis, experimental work, and reduction sequence and technological approach when you're analyzing lithic elements. What this says is that as we've done so far, we just put out tables of different types. These numbers are now questionable because we know that site formation processes affect these numbers. So maybe the differences we see in the numbers in the different sites all over India is probably a result of site formation processes and not the original archaeological record. So we should do inter-assemblage comparisons not on these numbers, but by developing reduction sequence and technological parameters through the means of checklists, which is something that I've been doing through my thesis. And finally, and most importantly, we need to realize that there is multiple scales of resolution of variability acting at different resolutions of space, both within the site, between sites, and over larger geographical areas, as well as through time. Because of the question of temporal compression, time itself also causes variability in the noted archaeological record. Functional variability is a result of multiple functions of both the site and the artifact, and how this is integrated through multiple episodes of use in these landscapes. And finally, because time, space, and functions are variable, we also need to situate them in their paleo-environmental contexts, which we've been starting to do of late. So we have to qualify all of this variability before we jump into culture as a source of variability, because we cannot how do you say, falsify any cultural causes for variability, because we don't have a time machine to go back and check it out. But we can qualify all the other forms of variability first, which can be falsifiable, and then only postulate culture as the cause for variability. I would like to thank various individuals and institutions who were responsible for various elements of this work, and thank you. Ma'am, I can't hear you. Yeah.
Who's there? No, you'll have to repeat it. It was mute. Okay. Thank you, Akash, for your very interesting presentation. Just one question we can afford, because we are short of time.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay. You can always put your questions in chat box, you can answer. And next we'll proceed for the next presentation, which will be given by Ravinder on imprints of Paleolithic man in Sajleru River Basin, Andhra Pradesh. Please continue, Ravinder.
Yes, ma'am. I'll show my slide. So, my slide is visual.
Yes, please continue.
Yes. So, good morning to all of you. I'm Ravinder, pursuing PhD from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi, under the supervision of Professor Manoj Kumar Singh. Today, I'm going to present the findings of the preliminary exploration which I have conducted in the Saglaru River Basin, Andhra Pradesh. So the title of my paper is Imprints of Paleolithic Man in the Saglaru River Basin, Andhra Pradesh. So where the initial field investigation done by Burkett and Kennedy, they explored the Kurnool region, and where a good collection of artifacts on stratigraphical and typological ground was made. In addition, these artifacts were divided into 4 series, series 1 to 4, which correspond with the earlier established lower, middle, upper, and Mesolithic culture chronology. And it was the initial field investigation which also shows the importance of Saglaru in terms of Paleolithic occupation. Then Sondra Rajan in 1952 discussed the finding of prehistoric site around the Gidalur region. After that, Thima Reddy and Sudarshan in 1978 delving the Saglaru River near the Badwal Sidhu Taluk of Kadapa district. Next, then Shankar et al. Recorded the fossil fauna from the Saglaru Valley in 2006. After that, Singh et al. Started the exploration in the Saglaru River Basin in 2010, which led to the discovery and excavation of the Kondapeta site. Further field exploration by Singh resulted in the discovery of a new flake and black-dominated Ramapuram industry. And these are the objectives of my study, to explore the Saglaru Valley in order to locate the prehistoric site and to understand the prehistoric cultural sequence in selected region. To achieve these objectives, pedestrian ground survey method was undertaken, and the topo sheet of the region was used to understand the region in their geographic aspect, and the software like Google Earth and Google Map were also used to explore the region. Then, the Saglaru River flows under the Kadapa Basin, which is a sustained basin. On the west side, it is surrounded by the Nalabalai Hills, and toward east, the Velikonda Hills covers the region. And the Saglaru River starts flowing from the Nandyal Reserve Forest, and the plain of the river is occupied by the Nallamalai shales, which are underlaid by the Viramkunda quartzites, and the shales are often quartzitic and more whitish. Saglaru is the tributary of Pennar River, and it also drained by several small streamlets like Inamalaru and Polarwanka. The pebble lithology of the river dominated by quartzite, quartzitic sandstone, vein pigmatic quartz, etc. Then these are the litho units exposed in the study area. So at Kondapeta, the exposed conglomerate horizon in this lower shows the evidences of Acheulean culture in stratified context. Then the map shows the location of the explored site, the Kondapeta, Modampalli, Nalaguntla, and Ramapuram. So this section, site description, this section provide an overview of the sites reflecting upon the geographical characteristics and the thick assemblages. And the Kondapeta site is located around 2.5 kilometers away from the Gidaru railway station, and it is situated on the left bank of the Saglaru. The vegetation that prevails at the site varied from scrubs to wide-ranging grasses, and it mostly includes the Propis julifera plant. The sheds of evidences have been found in a continuous fashion throughout the site, but as we move towards the periphery, the cluster evidence dissolves gradually and is found in a scattered manner. The site has a mixed assemblage of various tool types which predominantly belong to Acheulean to flake tool tradition. So the figure shows the artifacts from Kondapeta site, and a wide variety of Acheulean hand axes was reported from which include the pebble butt end, corded, triangular, and ovate hand axes. One Abelian hand axe was found in the lower layer of pebble conglomerate in exposed stratigraphic context on the left bank of the river. Evidences of cleaver, level core, flake, borer, side scraper, burin, and several blade tools were also reported. Then the Modampalli site. The site is located near the Kurnool-Longon Mail Road and 2.2 km from the Gidaru railway station, and approximately 500 meters from the Modampalli village. Although this site was not spread in a vast expanse of land, yet the concentration of lithic was extensive. The surface collection primarily consisted of both Acheulean and flake tool tradition, but with a preponderance of former, with significant amount of diminutive hand axes. Blade tools were also reported in a very meager number. Other lithic artifacts include the Levallois core, Boris, stepper, etc. And the figure shows the artifacts from few artifacts from Modampalli site. Then the Nallagundla site. It is situated near the Nallagundla village. And the site has a scrub-like topography with an undulating surface. Several smooth seasonal gullies which fed the Saglaru River during the monsoon were reported in that area. The lithic industry constitutes predominantly the medium-sized Acheulean hand axes, which include the pear-shaped, triangular, and also a few pebble button hand axes. A chopper tool was also found in the mixed assemblage with the other artifact. Few evidences of blade tools were also reported, but as compared to other visited sites, the lithic collection of Nandagutta is less in number. In the E. Ramapuram site, the site is situated in the Kalsapadu block of YSR district, Andhra Pradesh, near the E. Ramapuram village. And the river was surrounded by the rock formation of Proterozoic age constituting the limestone, shale, quartzite, and quartz pegmatite. The lithic assemblages were spread across the site surface, which constituted a few Acheulean hand axes, including the diminutive type. A significant amount of blade and scraper, side scraper, borer, burin, and bifacial point were also reported. The industry predominantly contains the blade tool. The sheds of microlithic industry also reported here. And the discussion. The above mentioned finding based on the preliminary survey conducted in the Saglaru River basin. The river bed contains a huge number of pebble and cobbles ranging from small to large size that could have been easy source of raw material to make stone tools. Many of the artifacts found in this studied site were born with original cortex, which predisposes the idea that people of those times
सिर्फ नाइट्रोजन से कुछ बोल नहीं पाएंगे
predispose the idea people of those times were not only dependent on flake, they also exploited different size pebble and cobbles which could be readily available in and around the river basin, and this might also be a reflection upon the skill in the fracture mechanics that our ancestors had during those times. Hello?
Hello, please unmute. Other people, please unmute.
Okay. The artifacts which have been reported across all the site are mixed assemblies of small, medium, and large tools. The typo-technical study of the tools from these sites suggests that the lithic assemblage is dominated by Acheulean tradition, except E. Ramapuram site, where the blade industry is found to be prevalent. At E. Ramapuram site, few bifacial points have also been reported, which could possibly used as arrowheads with small, thin, triangular leaf shape, and on the other hand, the larger one might have been used as a javelin or spear. The Kondapeta site had a distinguishing feature of the presence of cleaver, which could not be reported in any other site, in which maximum flaking was done on the lateral margin, and these have a terminal cutting edge that is devoid of any deliberate retouching. This shows the cognitive ability of the early human, in which a flake can be removed in such a way where the one surface acts as a cutting edge of the future tools. Then the low frequency of pebble tool as compared to other artifacts pointed toward their differential activity pattern. Based on the typo-technical investigation of the lithic assemblage of the tool found across all the survey sites. The lower Paleolithic can be further bifurcated into two phases, early and late Acheulean. The variability of tool type found from this site shows the wider procurement of natural resources through a variety of stone tool, and the lack of consistency in artifact frequencies may also be indicative of the seasonal change in subsistence activities. And the conclusion, this study in and around the Saguaro River basin has suggested that the prehistoric man occupied these regions, commencing from the lower Paleolithic up to the upper Paleolithic period predominantly, demonstrating the cultural evolution of man during this time frame, as the lithic evidences suggest that man could have been possibly sustaining either through hunting wild animal, by gathering vegetable items such as roots, fruit, tubers, etc. The studied site have documentation of substantial amount of both finished tools and habitats that propound that the early men reside in this region and manufacture tools. The sites surveyed are open air sites, all of which are located nearby the river, indicating that the easy and natural availability of water had tempered the early men to settle around the water source. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravinder. If any questions, please put in chat box. Ravinder will answer that. And who else? Rajesh. Okay, Rajesh, please continue with your question if you have. Rajesh Agnihotri, please. Parth. Okay, Parth.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anjum. Ravindra, a nice presentation. I just have a basic question about, so Saguaro Basin is also known for Toba ash, right?
Toba ash, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, have you found any lower Paleolithic artifacts in association with Toba ash?
Sir, these reported artifacts found on the post after the deposition of Toba ash.
So there's no mixture of the ash and the lower Paleolithic tools?
No, sir. This preliminary report doesn't show any admixture.
Okay, okay.
After the further exploration, maybe.
Yeah, because Maharashtra, I wanted to compare with Maharashtra. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So,
Rajesh, please, you want to ask questions? Okay, please continue. He's not there. He's not there? Okay, we'll shift on to our fifth presentation, which will be delivered by Shashi from Birbal Sahni Institute. And she will be presenting on stable isotope study of Pleistocene mammalian teeth from Western and Central India, preliminary results and paleoanthropological implications. Please, Shashi, continue with your presentation. Okay. What is he doing? Shashi, Shashi, please share your presentation. You just unshared it.
Yes, ma'am. I just unmuted myself. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Shashi, please go on.
Okay. So I'll be talking about stable isotope study of Pleistocene mammalian teeth from Western and Central India, preliminary results, and what are the paleoanthropological implications of that. So before diving into my presentation, I would like to give you an overview of the presentation. So I'll be talking about late Pleistocene archaeology and what kind of environment we are having in late Pleistocene. Then we have what I have done for sample collection, what is the relative archaeology of different sites from where I have collected the stable isotope samples, and what is the chronology of the site. Then I will be diving into stable isotope analysis and what are the implications and what future prospect we can expect from these analysis. So talking about the archaeology, late Pleistocene archaeology, we have technologies starting from Old One to Microlithic present in India, starting from 1.5 to 48,000 years back. What is interesting about late Pleistocene is we have almost all different kind of technology which are present in India, starting from late Acheulean, which is lasting up to 120,000 years back. And then we have the overlap of middle Paleolithic starting from 385,000 years to 34,000 years back. And then we have Upper Paleolithic, enigmatic Upper Paleolithic, which is not that much reliable date, but it is dated up to 45,000 years back. And then we have Microlithic overdating Upper Paleolithic at 48,000 years back. So what we are having in late Pleistocene is all the admixture and all the overlaps of different technology, which is probably signifying the different, possibly the different population surviving in India at that point of time. So talking about late Pleistocene environments, we have MIS 1, 3, and 5, which showing high precipitation, warm and wet climate in general. We have MIS 2 and 4 showing low precipitation, cold and dry climate. LGM, we have decrease in precipitation, and Holocene, we have humid climates. Then on ground level, when we have conducted a brief brief survey of all the study, we have studied the literature and published it in 2021. We have found that in a broad tentative level of late Pleistocene climate framework of South Asia, represent a linear trend with a relatively humid climate throughout the period, with some exception at 70 to 60,000 years back, or maybe 20 to 10,000 years back. As you can see in this graph, these are many studies done on the late Pleistocene environment in India. And most of them, you can see the green bars, which are showing the humid climates. And the only yellow bars are showing the dry climates, which are only increasing, exceeding the yellow, the green bars in 20 to 10,000 years back, and in 70 to 60,000 years back. So basically, in general, late Pleistocene environment are, we can say, like it's mostly humid climates. So talking about stable isotope analysis, we have conducted late stable isotope carbon and oxygen analysis on 23 late Pleistocene mammalian teeth. These teeth are coming from Gopinath, from Gujarat, and 9 separate localities from Narsinghpur district of Madhya Pradesh. And one site is from Hoshangabad district, Nehlai. It is also in Madhya Pradesh. So we have found the species of cervid, bovidus, hippopotamus, canis, and equus, which we have done stable isotope analysis on. These are the location of different sites. Gopinath is present in Gujarat, and Nehlai and Narsinghpur are in Madhya Pradesh. And then talking about Gopinath, it marks the southern-eastern point of the Saurashtra Peninsula, and it has yielded the redesigned fossils of Siva Bocchus Sanklai, which is very unique to middle and late Pleistocene record of Eurasia. And we have done stable isotope analysis on bovid and canis teeth from Gopinath, which were originally collected by Costa in 2011 and 15. So basic geography, basic archaeological chronology of the region is we are finding Acheulean artifact here, and which is possibly dated around 50 to 100,000 years back, which is coming into the late Pleistocene period. Then talking about Nehlai, Nehlai is a ghat situated on the left bank of Narmada River, which is 68 kilometers west from the Hoshangabad city. And we have conducted an excavation here, and we have found flake and vertebrate fossils in the excavation, yielding sus and bovid fossils. And broad stratigraphic correlation and artifact typology suggests that this site might be a middle Paleolithic site. We have also collected the OSL dating samples, but we are waiting for the OSL dates. And talking about various locality of Narsinghpur, we have collected samples from Sher River, Mohwa Kheda, Lucknow Nala, Barwan Ghat, Gera Nala, Solatpur Ghat, Raja Nala, and Devkachar in Narsinghpur district. And we have collected many different fossils, but only tooth were available in few of the samples. So cervid, bovid, sus, hippopotamus, and equus. And the area is majority dominated by the middle Paleolithic artifact. These are some of the sample on the field, and we have collected the stable isotope samples from them. Talking about stable isotope analysis of these sites, the delta 13 values of Gopinath and Narsinghpur ranges from negative 3.1 to positive 2.3 per mil, and negative 3.2 to positive 1.3 per mil, respectively, from Gopinath and Narsinghpur, which is predominantly suggesting the C4 based dietary pattern, which is basically saying the hot and humid climate in the region. But when we are coming to Nalai, it shows a lower and large range of the delta C13 values, showing -11 to almost -3.4 per mil, which suggests a predominantly C3-based dietary pattern. And the oxygen 18 values are suggesting the hot and humid climate at this condition. So before diving into the what is the implication of this study, I would like to emphasize on the what is the role of paleoclimate and archaeology. What is the link between them? So the presence of Middle Paleolithic artifacts at 385 at MIS 11 and MIS 5, they are almost presenting the same humid climatic condition. And it is suggested that the humid climatic conditions were very suitable for humans, hominin groups to disperse for a long distance. So again, the humid conditions have favored the Thar Desert technological development and technological spread in MIS 5 and MIS 3. It is suggested by Blinkhorn that during MIS 5, one site is occupied by the hominin group, and then it was abandoned during the MIS 4 due to the climatic conditions, and then again it was re-established again in MIS 3. And then we have the presence of Paleolithic artifact before and after Toba eruptions. And then we have rainforest adaptation in Sri Lanka by modern humans with microlithic technology at 38,000 years back. And talking about the implication of the study, as we have seen the Gopnath and other sites, they are suggesting the predominantly C4 vegetation and suggesting the hot and humid climate. It might have been helpful for the population coming from Africa or maybe from the Western India to invade into the other parts of the India, to disperse into the other central region of the India, or maybe it was possible as the late Pleistocene archaeologists suggest, there might be many other populations residing in India, and they could have been, the environment was suitable to grow and expand the present in the indigenous technology which was already present in India. So talking about the adaptability, and if anyhow there might be conditions when the climate was harsh or anything, and it is possible that populations might have been able to adapt the different technology, which is examples are coming from Nihan Cave in China, Nihan Basin in China, where it is estimated that the valley is occupied during all the condition, but there were some technological and raw material change in the archaeology due to the climatic condition. And further, we have to understand we don't have to rely only on the basic paleoclimatic interpretation or the data. We have to go deep into the regional level to understand what is the presence of the different paleoclimatic signature have the impact on the human population or hominin population at that particular time. So in future, we want to compare the present data with the contemporary data from the global region and the Indian data. And we have also collected the calcrete and carbonate samples and sediment samples from the sites, which we will try to match with the fossil data, which showed the result. And we are planning to conduct ESR, OSL, and AMS dating on the sites. And this is the main long-term goal, and it is very suitable for everyone who is working in the field of archaeology and trying to understand the prehistory or paleo-environment of the region or understand the hominin behavior pattern, to apply multi-proxy approaches like stable isotope analysis, palynology, or dating on the direct excavated Paleolithic sites. And then we have lots of space. As you can see on the map, these are the different paleo-environmental proxies which have been used in India and during late Pleistocene time. And most of the studies are coming from the northwestern part of the India, and whereas the central part is almost negligible, studies have been done, and especially the northeastern part of the India. So in future, we can try to fill the geographic and temporal gap in paleo-environmental as well as in archaeological studies. I would like to acknowledge Association of Quaternary Research for conducting this workshop, Dr. Anup Ambli and Dr. Parth Chauhan for giving their feedbacks on the presentation. Bharti Jangda, Vivek Singh, Dr. Ravish Lal Toshabanta for collection of fossil from Madhya Pradesh, Professor Vijay Sathe from Deccan College for allowing me to collect the sample there, and Ajit Prasad at MSU Baroda University for allowing me to collect the samples from there, and Agas Costa for collecting the samples of Gopnath, and the funding UGC SRF STARS grant by Ministry of Education and ISER Mohali for providing me some funding. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Shashi. Just one question, if any, or you can put in chat box. Okay, we'll move on for next presentation, which will be delivered by Edward and his colleagues on remarkable cranium that he found in from Kashmir, India. So please, Edward, continue with your presentation.
All right, can you see the presentation and hear me?
Yes, but it's not full screen. Please put it at full screen.
Is it full screen now, or?
Make it full screen.
Yeah, just a minute.
Yeah. No.
Please present your entire screen and not just the window. So I think the problem is coming.
How about that?
Just a second. Yes, perfect.
Perfect, great. Thank you so much. Greetings from snowy Connecticut. My name is Advait Zukra, and I'm a vertebrate paleontologist at Yale. And today I'm going to be talking about a remarkable new skull of Paleoloxodon that I've been working on. It was found in Kashmir. So in 2000, Professor Ghulam Butt, who was then at Kashmir University, excavated a site in a quarry near the town of Qalandar in Pampore, near about 17 kilometers away from Srinagar. And at this site, he found this incredible skull, which was found laying on its ventral surface with about an 8-foot-long tusk and lying on top of the mandible. This specimen is probably one of the most complete proboscidean skulls found in South Asia in recent times, and I was privileged enough to get a chance to study it. So the skull was found in this quarry, in this fairly fine-grained sandstone deposit. This deposit is part of the Pampore member of the Nagum formation of the Karaba group in Kashmir. So the Karaba group essentially represents a paleo lake deposit in the valley. And it was deposited between about 4.5 million years ago to about 300,000 years ago. Deposition stops when you start seeing the uplift of the Pir Panjal range and the deposition of loess on top of these fluvial leucostrine sediments. In addition to the skull, which is actually quite complete, the team also uncovered postcranial remains, part of the actual skeleton, part of the limbs, parts of the ribs, and even smaller parts of the toe bones and the hyoids. One of the most interesting things about this collection is that in addition to this one big individual, if you look at the entire collection, you actually see remains of smaller elephants as well, suggesting that this was some sort of a death assemblage. The taphonomy is still not clear, but here's a picture of two scapulae that were found at the site. The one on the left is considerably smaller than the one on the right, which would suggest the presence of at least two individuals at this place. What was also pretty cool about this site is that about 20 meters away from the skull where they found the rest of the postcrania. They also found a cache of about 57 stone tools, which we think represent the Valois tools. These tools are made out of granite, which we think came from the Panjal range. The remains are now housed at the Wadia Museum of Natural History at Jammu University, and the skull is on display in this display case where you can actually go in and study it. I, along with colleagues from the British Museum, the NHM in London, and the University of York were invited by Professor Bhatt in 2019 to study the specimen. And what I'm going to be presenting on now is the findings about the actual skull and the animal and its taxonomy. So it's quite a complete skull, all things considered. It's got a bit of taphonomic deformation on its forehead, as you can see up here, a bit of crushing on the nasals and the frontals, but beyond that, it's probably the most complete skull of this genus known from the subcontinent. Part of the left part of the skull was broken during transportation and preservation at the museum, and currently the skull is deposited in this display case in sort of a cement base, so I could only study the dorsal surface. The actual tusk was about 8 feet in length, but some people came in and stole part of that in the field. But anyways, I digress. The skull is characterized by these elongated, flaring pre-maxillary bones, which are basically where the tusks go, high and wide frontal bones, which cause it to have this wide forehead, a robust orbital rim, and a wide incisive fossa, all characteristics of the genus Paleoloxodon. The teeth are actually quite well preserved, and you can see the cigar or lozenge-shaped enamel figures, a small medial expansion called a loxodon sinus, and parasagittal enamel folding. And most characteristically, you can see the dot-dash-dot enamel wear pattern, which is very characteristic of the genus Paleoloxodon. And you can actually see all of these characteristics in other skulls of the genus as well. For example, in Paleoloxodon pneumaticus from the Godavari Valley and Paleoloxodon antiochus from Germany. You can see these large flaring premaxillaries. But the one thing which you'll probably see in these skulls is that the one in the middle and the right have this large, almost mushroom-shaped structure right on top, and this is called the parieto-occipital crest, which is a bony structure which evolves in these more derived species of Paleoloxodon, but it's not found in the Pampur skull. So here's a close-up of the forehead, basically, and you can see that there's a slight inflammation or an expansion of the parietal, but you don't see the same kind of expansion as you see in some of these other species, which will become very obvious as I go through my slides. So here are two skulls of Paleoloxodon pneumaticus from Central India, and here you can see that they both have a very large and robust overhanging parieto-occipital crest. You can see the same feature in these skulls of Paleoloxodon antiochus from Europe. Again, quite large, robust, and overhanging. And did I just lose the presentation? Or there we go. However, the actual crest is only moderately developed in the Japanese species Paleoloxodon naumani, and only extends slightly anterior to the frontal plane. You have to go all the way back to Africa to the origin of the genus Paleoloxodon to start seeing skulls which have a very weakly developed parieto-occipital crest, and that's actually what we see in the specimen from Kashmir. So now the question is, why is this specimen from Kashmir so different from these other specimens that we find in central India? Does it represent a new species or not? So the first thing I did was I compared the skull with this older skull from East Africa and from more derived specimens from central India. And what you can see is that the Kashmir skull actually has a mosaic of characters. For instance, the Paleoloxodon Reki skull from Ethiopia has these sharply downturned margins of the nasals, whereas more derived skulls have these more rounded margins of the nasals. The more derived skulls have these broad foreheads, whereas Paleoloxodon Reki from Africa has a tapered and narrow forehead. But there are differences as well. The more derived species have this extremely robust bright occipital crest, whereas the skulls from Ethiopia and the skull from Kashmir have a weakly developed bright occipital crest. So this was a fairly interesting finding. And when I dug into this some more, I found a skull which was discovered in Turkmenistan in the 1950s and 60s. It was described as a species called Paleoloxodon turkmenicus. And even though the skull is poorly known, it's fairly fragmentary, it exhibits a weak bright occipital crest and a broad forehead, which suggests that the skull from Pampur actually belongs to this species. And in fact, when we dated the specimen using amino acid racemization, we get an approximate Middle Pleistocene age for the specimen, which makes sense given that we found it in the Pampur member. In real life, this would have been a fairly large elephant. This specimen belongs to a middle-aged Paleoloxodon, would have weighed about 10 to 12 tons in real life, stood about 13 feet high at the shoulder, so about twice the weight of a modern bull Asian elephant. And the finding of this specimen in Kashmir helps illustrate the large diversity of proboscideans in the valley. So you've got Paleoloxodon turkmenicus, we have remains of Elephas hystricus, and Rajiv and I just published a paper on a Gomphothere from Kashmir, suggesting that in the Middle Pleistocene, the environment was so different and highly productive enough to support populations of these three very large mammals. So I'm going to stop there and thank my colleagues from the UK and from India, especially Professor Bhatt and Jammu University. And I'm happy to take your questions. If you don't have time now, feel free to email me or put your question in the chat.
Thank you, Edward. I think if any questions, put in chat box, Edward will answer to it. And we move on to the next presentation. This will be delivered by Gayatri, and it is on phytolate analysis from Agaram, Tamil Nadu. Please start your presentation, Gayatri.
Yes. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, please continue.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gayatri, research assistant from French Institute of Pondicherry. I'm glad to present this paper on behalf of my co-authors. Phytolith analysis from Agaram, Quaternary cluster, Tamil Nadu. What I'm going to present now is the first results of phytolith studies from Agaram. PAD is an urban settlement on the banks of the river Vaigai. Until now, 7 seasons of archaeological excavations have taken place and have also been dated. Recently, the Tamil Nadu State Archaeological Department have dated burial paddy husk and other organic cereals. They were dated between 6th century BCE to 1st century BCE. Therefore, we can say that the urbanization around the Vaigai River plains happened around 6th century BCE. In order to better understand this ancient settlement, other sites around KAD were excavated, of which Agaram is one of them. Agaram is located in Kalagirkade Taluk of Sivagangai district. This is an image showing an overview of trenches excavated in 2020 at Agaram KAD cluster. So it is from one of these trenches that samples for this study was collected. This is a trench where samples for the study were taken. The samples were collected along the walls of this trench. Our study is focused around the 300 centimeter depth because 300 centimeter was a transitional stage between the microlithic and the Iron Age. This is a picture showing the excavation being done at 300 centimeter depth. The important discovery made at Agaram is the occurrence of microliths in large quantities compared to other artifacts found. So microliths, as we all know, are small stone tools which are less than 3 centimeters in dimension. Phytoliths were also analyzed at the same depths where microliths were largely quantified. Phytoliths were extracted using the standard density method with a few modifications. The modifications were that different stages of phytolith extraction were measured. The aim of this was to quantify the percentage of phytolith. So here is an illustration showing the measurements at different stages of phytolith extraction. So here we have the clay, the micron, and like the organic matter, etc. So the highlighted part shows the percentage of phytolith recovery. For example, from the depths study, we have percentage of phytoliths have ranged up from only among 2 depths, and blocky is found among 4 depths. So interestingly, we see here that bulliform poaceae and bulliform rice occur close to the surface. They occur profusely close to the surface. Bilobates diagnostic to Panicoideae subfamily are dominant at 320 centimeter depth. Saddles and rondel morphotypes diagnostic to Chloridoideae subfamily occur relatively high at 200 centimeter depth and 100 centimeter depth. Trapeziform sinuate diagnostic to Fisticoideae are found at less amounts compared to other grass subfamilies. Achenes and hat-shaped occur relatively low compared to grass phytoliths. And globular echinate diagnostic to Ericaceae occur in high proportions at 10 centimeter depth. Blocky, which are diagnostic to woody dicots, occur high at 300 centimeter depth, but are absent at 280, 290, and 300. Among the non-diagnostic phytoliths, we have the elongate, acicular head cell, lanceolate, and orbicular, which occur commonly among all the depths. And other geometrical shapes such as reniform, fusiform, and ovate are also visible, but are quite diverse at the 300 centimeter depth. Rectangular, square, tabular, and trapeziform may correspond to that of the blocky, but as we study in a two-dimensional view, it is difficult for us to exactly say. Therefore, three-dimensional studies can help us understand these non-diagnostic phytoliths. Here are some of the images of phytolith morphotypes found at Agaram. globular akinate, achenes, bloom from rice husk, bulliform rice, bilobates. Bilobates are, in general, are diverse among themselves. So Jatisha and others in 2015 have studied phytoliths of Panicoideae subfamily, where they have classified bilobates according to their shank length, that is the length between the two lobes. And we too have also obtained different types of bilobates, such as the bilobates with long shanks and short shanks, and also scooped bilobates. Moving on, we have saddle, elongate, polylobates, blocky, cross, rondel, and trapeziform sinuate. We can, to summarize, the first results from phytolith studies of ongoing paleoecological studies from Agaram are promising. All depths contain substantial phytoliths in terms of concentration and in terms of phytolith morphotypes. We have encountered about 38 different morphotypes of phytoliths. Phytolith morphotype count ranged from 642 to 1,368 in the 7 samples counted. Square, rectangular, polylobate, tabular, vesicular, scutiform, and several other non-diagnostic morphotypes were also found at all the same samples, but the highest being found around the 300 centimeter depth. The levels with a rich density of microliths, that is around the 300 centimeter depth, correspond to relatively more phytoliths in concentration and in diversity. From the results discussed, we can say that the ancient environment in which people had settled was a grass-dominated landscape dotted with palm trees such as the Palmyra boracis verbellifer or the phoenix species and dicotyledonous trees. It was also a landscape, we can say with a landscape with pockets of moisture as sedges and oryzoid phytoliths were covered. The presence of oryzoid grasses that produce the signatures of bloom phytoliths from rice husk and some bulliforms from the leaves is most likely from wild rice and its progenitors. The vegetation dynamics indicated so far point to a good basis for linking to human habitation. So the continuous settlement of this landscape going back probably of 2000 BC and right up to nearly medieval times indicates a landscape favorable for people and probably also provided the necessary plant resources for people to live, such as the wild rice, relative of the domesticated rice we have today, the Rhiza sativa, and palm trees and others. We can also say that these people were, these settlers were nomadic peoples, as we have found archaeological evidences and phytoliths high at the surface and at 300 centimeter depth. Therefore, in between it is very meager. So therefore, we can say these settlers were kind of nomadics and not permanent settlers. Furthermore, pollen analysis may also help understand the tree vegetation of these ancient landscapes. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri. I think we are short of time. We'll continue with our next presentation, last presentation, I think, and it will be delivered by Sakshi Moria on understanding paleodietary and habitat using carbon and oxygen isotope of herbivores and mammals from marginal Ganga plain. Please, Sakshi, continue with your presentation. Sakshi, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please continue.
Wait.
Share your slides. थोड़ा लेट है ना 9:11:59 हो गया 12:20 हो जाए
Okay, share. Is it showing, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay.
Please,
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, be
I'm
fast
Sakshi
and
Paudar,
continue within 5 minutes.
presenting on a topic of understanding paleodietary and habitat using carbon and oxygen isotope of herbivores, mammals from marginal Ganga plain. As fossils of herbivores are very good archive of past vegetation, which is recorded well in the isotopic composition of their molars. And in the Indian subcontinent, large Asian elephants were recorded from Narmada, Godavari, and marginal Ganga plain. And there is elephants which reflects the shift in ecology that can be traced by tooth animal isotopic analysis. And uh, herbivores fossils, which is molar fragments, represent one of the finest archive for the reconstruction of paleodiet and paleoecology of late Quaternary landforms. And tooth animal, which is highly resistant of isotopic alteration compared to dentine and bones, which is remain unaltered over a millions of years, and it is tightly crystalline of biogenic hydroxyapatite. Um, Next, now I am telling about the how carbon isotope fractionated in plants and herbivores, mammalian animal. As we see that the diet of these animals had in the past, so isotopes are very important for reconstructing diet and ecology. So we use stable isotope carbon and oxygen, which is fractionated by the various plants like C3 and C4 carbon. Carbon from the atmosphere get fractionated, and it reaches by the time feeders like C3 and C3 feeders and C4 feeders, and they have a particular value of C3 plants, which is minus 14.5 per mil, and for C4 feeders, we have a particular value minus 0.5 per mil, which is measured with a respective scale, VP dB. And if we see that in a graph of this, if a mammal is predominantly C3 feeder, the delta value falls C3 C3 value, which is around 14 minus 14 per mil. And if somebody have falling towards the towards a minus 0.5 per mil, it will consider in a C4 feeder, and in between they were mixed feeders, which is represent in a fraction of modern plants and modern mammals, which is get further fractionated by the minus 14 per mil. And as this is my study area from which the samples have been reported. The study cliff section are situated along the inside valley of Yamuna, and the fossils for the isotopic analysis were collected from the two sections. The marginal Ganga plain, from the marginal Ganga plain, one is from Musanagar and another one is from Jigni section, and this section is chronologically luminescence. Age of Musanagar cliff section is ranges between 62 kilo to 16 kilo, which is, whereas the unit 2 that yields fossils is dated 62 and 58 from where the fossils were collected at the bottom. Laterally, this channelized gravel unit 2 that turns for 2 kilometers shows sandy Lansdowne unit at the northern extreme of the cliff, yielded edges between 54 to 51. 54 to 51, and characterized by a vertebrate molar fragments of Equus nomadicus, and this section from the top of 11 meter of the section term as a third unit represent the interfluence species, which is finally fine silty to silty clay intervened with the sand lenses dated 16 kilo year. And this section is further south in the marginal Ganga plain, 13-meter cliff at Jigni section. Is located along the Dhasan River, a tributary of Yamuna, at 120-meter above mean sea level, where the bottommost floodplain unit is 3-meter thick, composed of brown sandy clay silt consisted by calcrete nodules, which is erosionally overlain by 2.5-meter thick channelized gravel unit comprising clast of granite, quartzite, quartz, and yielded a partial skull. And this section have yielded a Elephas pneumaticus at the age of 56 kilo here. This is followed by 2 to 3 meter silty sand intervening lenses of clay silt, and this region is uh, climatically semi-arid to subhumid condition, and the rainfall occurs between from June to September, which is controlled by the southwest monsoon range up to 800 to 1000 millimeter. And this further, these are the fossils which is recorded from the sections. We have done stable isotopes, carbon and oxygen. From the 6 fossilized molar samples, we have collected 14 samples from the bovine lower molar, and 10 samples from the bovine upper molar, and 17 samples from the Elephas pneumaticus, and 3 to 5 mg of tooth enamel from bovine lower and upper molar were collected at interval 5 to 10 vertically using microdrill, and these samples were chemically treated with the 3% H2O2 for 30 minutes and to remove organic content, which is followed by the 0.1 molarity acetic acid for 30 minutes to remove the secondary carbonate, and further it was rinsed with the milieu and dried at 40 degrees Celsius, and it was measured with the help of the IMS isotope ratio mass spectrometer. Next, this is a C4 percentage. From this formula, we calculated the C4 percentage, where the mean delta 13C NML is C4 feeder is plus 2 per mil, and delta 13C NML C3 feeder is minus 14 per mil. And this is the formula for to calculate the Vismo. These are the results we have got. The large part of the diet, as we have seen, most of the samples showing C4 vegetation, as they have showing the enriched and depleted trend. We have seen that all the specimen shows, though in a few bovine specimen, these are the bovines. Bovine samples shows delta 13C value, which is ranges more negative and indicating the indicating a mixture of C3, C4, and it was possibly C3 diet. And if we see in the pneumaticus, Elephas pneumaticus, they are showing the high and low seasonal peaks, which implying that the animal was predominantly by C4 grazers. And this is the cross plot, and we have also plotted one graph which shows the this all the bovines were most of the samples were fall in the C4 grazers, and some samples showing intermediate mixed feeders. Inferences.
Sakshi, please conclude your work. Hello, Sakshi, please conclude your
Yes,
work.
Okay, ma'am. Elephas Nomadica showing the recovered from the channelized gravel litho unit of Jigni section, which is dated 56 kiloyear dominantly, which has headed a seafood diet system and exhibited in a swampy grassland landscape rather than a savanna type forest landscape. And the bovine fossil specimen recovered from the upper part of the channelized gravel litho unit, which is dated between 54 to 51 kiloyear, which is dominantly favor C4 dietary system and were pure grazers living in open habitat grassland. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sakshi. Now we end this session, and thank you all for cooperating to make this session a success. Now we continue with the another session, which is on quaternary landscape evolution, and moderators are Drs. Vimal Singh, Santosh K. Shah, and Anup Ambli. I hand over to Vimal now. Please continue with this section.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, all. Since we are short on time, we will start immediately. I, along with Dr. Santosh Shah and Dr. Anup Ambili, welcome you all to this session on quaternary landscape evolution. We have got around 6 talks in this session. And since we are really short on time, we will be very strict with timings. And every presenter will be informed 1 minute prior to their time. So kindly try to remain within time. And with this now, I invite Dr. Santosh Shah to initiate the proceedings of this.
Thank you, Bimal. So I welcome all the presenters for this session of quaternary landscape and evolution. And as already Bimal said, we have 6 talks. So without wasting time, we would like to invite Deepika Datta to present her talk. The title of the talk is Assessment of Erosional and Depositional Environment at Majuli Island, Assam, India. Please share your screen.
Sir, is it visible now?
No, not yet. In the bottom,
now is it visible?
In the bottom, yeah. Now it's okay. Please.
Okay, sir.
Yeah,
okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Deepika Datta from Sikkim University. Now I am going to present on the topic Assessment of Erosional and Depositional Environment at Majuli Island, Assam, India. Now coming to introduction, the river mechanics are analyzed very well through their important principles and laws operating in actions of erosion, transportation, and deposition. River bank erosion is one of the major geomorphic process observed in Majuli Island, and Majuli Island is one of the world's largest inhabited river island, and the shape of the island are made to convey the discharge and sediment supply from the stream catchment. The total gross area of the Majuli Island was 1255 square kilometer in the beginning of the 19th century, and presently only 474.20 square kilometer of area has been remaining. According to Devi et al., 2018, change in area of Majuli Island from 1975 to 2015 were 590.9 square kilometer to 474.20 square kilometer. Now coming to study area. The study is concentrated entirely on the Majuli Island, the largest inhabited freshwater river island, now functioning as a full-fledged district since couple of years. The island is bounded by 4 rivers, the Brahmaputra River in the south, the Subansiri River in the west, Luit River and the old stream of the Brahmaputra River in the northwest, which is meeting the Kherkutia Suti on the northeast of the Majuli Island. Now in the left-hand side of this figure, boundary shown by red in color, this one which is bigger. This is the boundary of Majuli Island in the year 1954, which a total area of more than 1200 square kilometer, whereas at present The present boundary of the Majuli Island only is only this much, with a total area of 474 square kilometer. Now coming to the objective of my study is to study the influence of landform and geomorphological processes on depositional and erosional environment at Majuli Island. This is the flow chart of proposed methodology. And the study was carried out by a field survey and studies and selection of vertical profile along the Brahmaputra, Subansiri, Luit and Kherkutia Suti at Majuli Island. Then measuring the height of vertical profiles, then identification of lithology, color and sedimentary structures, then determine the vertical deposition in SADLOG software, then identification of faces and calculation of faces and metrics, then preparation of faces matrix diagram, then analysis the depositional behavior of lithofaces, then generation of dominated sedimentary faces map at Majuli Island. Now coming to results and discussion part. Left hand side of this figure, this one is showing the variation of lithology around Brahmaputra River. A total of 6 outcrop sections were selected and studied, and the sections where shows the dominance of sand faces over the mud faces. A similar lithology were also observed in 3 selected sites and outcrop sections of Subansiri River. In the Subansiri River sections, there were also showing the dominance of sand faces than mud faces. And here in both the figure, one is showing variation of lithology along the Luit River, and another one is variation of lithology along the Kherkutia Suti. And both the outcrop sections showing the dominance of mud faces over sand faces. Now these are some of the photographs of bank erosion taken by me during my field survey. And now coming to the interpretation part. After getting the transition between the various lithofaces, further analysis by correlating the transitions with each other was carried out in order to reach a final faces relationship diagram, which can explain the correlation between the faces so that a preferred paleo environment of the Majuli Island can be deciphered. The massive mud, that is B, at the bottom of the island is significant for calm environment. This to B is significant for calm environment. And a massive sand layer is overlies over the underlying mud layer. Maybe this sand layer is due to the higher energy conditions. The transitions between massive mud and massive sand, that is between phases A and phases B, is the most significant occurrence of 2 phases among all others throughout the island. Along with this, some significant structures were also observed, like ripple cross lamination, cross bedding, parallel lamination, then flesher bedding, lenticular bedding, etc. Now this is the facies map of the Majuli Island, and this is the bank erosion vulnerability zonation map of the island. The area which is dominated by sand, sand faces were showing higher, more vulnerable to erosion, and the area which is dominated by mud showing a less erosion as compared to the area which are dominated by sand. Now coming to conclusion part. This study also provide the important clue for present-day dynamic processes operating over the Majuli Island in the form of an erosion. The landform is characterized by 2 main phases, as one is mud-dominated and another one is sand-dominated. The mud-dominated sequence represent floodplain deposit, which are well developed in the area along the Kherkutia and Luit River. The sand-dominated sequence represent channel and bar deposit, which are well developed in the area of the Subansiri and Brahmaputra River. The sedimentary record along Kherkutia, Suti River and Luit River represents the paleochannel succession of Brahmaputra River and Subansiri River respectively. The sand faces are more prone to erosion than the thick mud faces deposited area. Therefore, the present study suggests the sedimentary record of Brahmaputra and Subansiri is more vulnerable to erosion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepika, for completing your talk within a time. And it's a very interesting study, and it will help also in the future, like paleoclimatic studies, which many workers are doing in the region. So if anyone has, if any question is there, then kindly put in a chat box so that she can address there. And now I invite second speaker, Ananya Dibbadarshini, and she is going to talk on late quaternary sedimentation and tectonic history of the Chitwan Intermountain Valley, Central Himalaya.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yeah, of course. You are audible. Kindly share your screen.
Yes. So it's visible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this talk is on the late quaternary sedimentation and tectonic history of the Chitwan Intermountain Valley. Now, there are several intermountain valleys in the Himalaya that are developed between the main boundary thrust and the main frontal thrust. These intermountain valleys, they act as sediment sinks, and they store and release sediments at different time scales. So the landforms in the intermountain valleys, they are generated in response to the late quaternary climatic and tectonic events. So they have remained a prime focus for the recent morphotectonic investigations. In this study, we have focused on the Chitwan Dune, which is in central Himalaya. So the Chitwan Dune, it lies in central Nepal to the southwest of Kathmandu. It is surrounded to its north and south by the inner and frontal Shivalik ranges. The Narayani and the East Rapti rivers form the major drainage network here. So firstly, we have carried out a detailed geomorphic mapping of the area, and we have identified many different fans, surfaces, terraces, and isolated hills, etc. So as you can see, this is a very detailed and complicated map. So in order to simplify this, we have divided the landforms into 5 major levels based on elevation, slope, and degree of incision. So the level 5 is the highest topographic feature. Then in a previous work, we have identified many active thrusts in the valley that deform the quaternary landforms. So now here we have carried out lithofacies analysis and OSL dating of the dune landforms, and stratigraphic sections from different geomorphic levels have been investigated. So the level 5 units, they comprise of isolated hills and remnant patches in the northern part of the valley at the foot of the inner Shivalik range. So these are the highest and the oldest topographic features, and we have not dated them in the present study, but our study shows that it was formed before 112 K, because the lower level and younger landforms that enclose the level 5 units are dated to be younger than 112. And also in a previous study by Kimura et al. 1995, they have suggested that the level 5 units are quite old than 120. Then the level 4 geomorphic units, they are present in the proximal part of the dune, and they enclose the level 5 units. These level 4 units, they consist of both stream flow type alternating gravel and mud sequences, as well as debris flow type massive gravels. Here we get an age of around 112 K from one of the sections. So the younger landforms that enclose the level 4 units, they are dated to be younger than 70 K. So based on that, we suggest that the level 4 units were developed between 112 to 70 K. The level 3 units, they are quite widespread in the valley, and they occur in the medial part of the valley and mainly consist of stream flow type deposits. Here we get OSL ages of 70K, 60K, 49K, and 29K. So this indicates a continued long period of aggradation between 70 to 29K. So during this period, we find that the Narayani River was building a large fan in the central part of the valley, and then subsequently it has shifted westwards and incised into its fan to produce different terrace levels. So the 20K age, it comes from top of the T3 terrace, so it gives the top age of the level 3 units. And here we find thick, massive sand deposits which are quite extensive and which have thickness of about 10 to 20 meters. Then the level 2 geomorphic units, they occur in small patches, and they consist of thick paleosols which have been dated around 22 Ka. In some places, these paleosols are overlain by thin layer of gravels which give an age of around 18 Ka. So this suggests that there was a period of non-deposition and soil development in the valley between nearly 25 to 18 K. So after that, sedimentation in the valley resumed at around 18 K, and it formed the youngest and lowest level 1 geomorphic units. The level 1 units, they enclose the level 2 and level 3 units. From one of the sections from level 1, we get a very young age of around 1.39 to 0.39 Ka. So based on the geomorphic characteristics and the OSL ages, we identify 5 distinct phases of landform development in the valley. So one before 112 K, then between 112 to 70 K, then 70 to 25 K, and then there was incision and soil development in the valley between 25 to 17 K, and then there was the level 1, the youngest deposits were deposited after 18 kiloyear. So when we compare this with the late Quaternary climatic fluctuations, then the major aggradational phases from Chitwan, they mainly coincide with the wet climatic periods, and they are also similar to aggradation phases from other intermontane valleys in the Himalaya. So then we also observe distinct incision in the valley between 25 to 18 K that coincides with the last glacial maxima. So now tectonics, the role of tectonics is also very prominent in the valley, because the different levels, they have been uplifted, particularly the level 5, level 4 and level 2. They are uplifted along the active thrust, and they are only restricted to the hanging wall of the active thrust. So this suggests that the incision of the level 5, 4 and 2 units, it is primarily a result of tectonic activity in the dune, while the level 3 and level 1 units, they are not affected by any structures. So the level 3 units were incised during the LGM, and the level 1, the post LGM level 1 units were probably incised, would have incised in the Holocene, but we do not have any ages over here to predict the exact timing. So to summarize our findings, so the major aggradation phases from Chitwan Valley, it is similar with other intermontane valleys in the Himalaya, and it coincides with the phases of enhanced monsoons. Then incision in the valley is majorly controlled by tectonic activity and the truncation of the geomorphic units along the active thrust. Then incision is also evident during the LGM, and this also coincides with other parts of the Himalaya. Then the incision of the younger post-LGM landforms, it could have occurred at the start of Holocene, as a major incisional phase is reported around 18 K from other parts of the Himalaya. But that is, since we do not have any ages here, so it is a tentative, and it requires further investigation. So thank you. I couldn't explain many things because of the time constraint, but I think I can take a few questions.
Thank you, Ananya, for telling us about the region, Chitwan Intermountain Valley, with lots of OSLDT and regarding the tectonic and climate of the region. So moving on to the next talk by Dr. Binita Fardial, who is our association secretary, that is Association of Quaternary Researchers, and also a convener of this Quaternary Congress. So now I invite Dr. Binita Fardial kindly for the talk. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Santosh. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
And the presentation? Yeah. Please. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Santosh. Here I'm in front of you to speak on the landscape evolution of the Northwest Trans-Himalaya during the late Quaternary. And this is work done with my postdoc students and my PhD students. So I'll be taking you to this place marked in a rectangle. It's part of the Trans-Himalayan high altitude desert. These are the mid and low latitude region that comes under the influence of Red Sea. As I say, it's high altitude. It is one of the harshest ecosystems of the world. It is the western fringe of the Tibetan Plateau, as you can see the position, and very close to the northern syntaxes. So the ISM, which brings rain to the major part of the Indian subcontinent, only reaches this part when it is very intense. It has a high intensity. So I'm taking you to Ladakh, the newly formed Union Territory of India. The main river here is the Indus. Indus is the backbone of Ladakh, and it has several tributaries like the Shyok River, the Nubra River, the Tamse River. These are the left bank tributaries, the right bank tributaries, the Hanle, the Janskar, the Yapola, the Suru, and many more. So Indus is structurally controlled, and it flows along the Indus-Suchi zone in this area. And other Suchi zones are the Shyok Suchi zone to the north and the Karakoram fault. So this area, having to say that it's structurally active, it is active. So I'll be talking about this region, this particular region, although much work has been done from the other river valleys also. Yeah, due to time constraint again, this is, I'll go here. So because we're talking about landscape evolution, it's very important to know about the geology. So we already know that these are the thrusts of the area, and between the thrusts are the, we have the Indus Molassic rock thrusting over the Ladakh range, which are batholiths, and we have Karakoram batholiths. In the entire, Ladakh area, it is that we have igneous rocks, whether they are the plutonic or the volcanics of Khardungla, of Dras. And we have these metamorphic rocks also, the Pangongso range and of the Janskar range, and we have the sediments also. So, all types of rocks are there with their different tensile strength, and that is, so the coupling between the geological and the tectonic evolution with the climatic shifts that I'll be talking about in my later slides at different time scales have shaped this valley. So when we say landscape evolution of the Indus Valley, there are two schools of thoughts. One supports the climate-driven processes as the primary controlling factor, and the other, it recognizes erosion and uplift and as a feedback mechanism. So what we did is that we saw the valley from both points of view, and we chose to work on the lake sediments, both Paleo Lake and the present lake. So although the entire valley, there are beautiful quaternary landform features, like we have river terraces, much work has been done in river terraces, colluvial deposits, moraines, and then alluvial fans, debris deposits, and many more. So lakes were chosen because they are dynamic systems that integrate environmental, climatic, and tectonic forcing into continuous high-resolution archives of local and regional scale. So I'll take you to the field now. So this is the Indus River flowing like this, downstream like this. So Paleo lake deposits, you see this buff-colored facies, this buff-colored facies, it's like exposed on both sides of the river, and much of it has already been washed away. And these are like meters thick sections of very fine clay, silt, and sand. And I'll just take you down in this, from this place, from these red dots, I'll just take you down. And you see how beautifully the sections are exposed along the river, in this river, especially on the right bank. So this is the Spitak section, the Gupuk section, Sispol, Razong, Nurla, and sometimes they are blanketed by the slope debris, and then because the road widening project in Ladakh is there, so we get to see these road cut sections, and we are amazed to see the other these Paleolithic sediments there. So similarly, Khalsi, Mitzo, Achinathan, Bhima, and so on. And all these were studied, and they were, the lithology was done and sedimentology was done. What I want you to notice here is the dates. The dates were obtained by radiocarbon dates and OSL because these were fluvial aquastreams. Sometimes you had, meters thick of just clay, but sometimes they were bedded with silty sand and coarse sand also in some sections. So just to have a look on the chronology. So we have the oldest date in this as 17,000, 15,000, then some sections started from 10,000. Basically 10,000 to 3,000 were the dates that we were dealing about in the sections that were exposed along this part of the river. So all the sections were analyzed for multi-proxy analysis. We did textural analysis, mineral magnetism, total organic content, CHN ratios, and diatoms, paleognophacies. And for zoning, environmental distinct zoning, we did it in Celia 1.7 Conus. And this is just an example of one of the proglacial lakes at South Kulu, which here where we could, we could record a sub-century climatic variability. So out of the many parameters that were done, these are the 10 representatives that are shown in the figure. The Chi ARM and S ratios, telling us about the detrital input, then clays here, clay percentage, and then the delta 13C and the C by N ratios, we have delta 15N. We also did the benthic by benthic diatom ratios. We also we could separate the stress indicating diatom species, which were Stauronace and Netschia, Navicula, and so on, and then also low temperature diatom species and some charcoal that was found in the sediments. So having to say that all the sections where the paleo lake and or proglacial lake in the area were done, and the overall climatic picture from the Ladakh was like this, especially after the LGM. So what we could do is we could tell when the lake was formed and when it was breached for the paleo lake section, and from the proglacial lakes that were in the ridges, those lakes we could tell a very higher climatic resolution. The overall picture that came was, it very well matched to the global picture that we have. We had 6 colder arid events that coincided with the older Dryas, younger Dryas, 8.2, and we had a mid-Holocene till 2.75 thousand years before present, an arid period with a peak aridity at 2.7, and then we had these events. So this was the climate part of it. When we come to the morphotectonic parameters, this is the blue line is the longitudinal profile, and then we have this gradient index, and we say that like two places we could we mark the midpoints. So we divided the valley into 3 segments. The first segment where the Spituk Lake section was there, where we had some Paleolake sections and some terraces, fill terraces. So there we saw a gradation and increased denudation. In the middle part of the section, which had flat terraces, in addition to the fill terraces and Paleolake section, sections, the strongest incision was seen in this area, and then the river enters into a very narrow area or gorge, and here also strong incision rates were seen. So the neotectonic, you see that we have the Indus Molasse, thrusting over the Ladakh batholith along this Indus zone, and this has led to the development of the back thrust. That is the Stoke fault, and minor cross-cutting, minor strike-slip faults in the area also. So tectonics is also, evident in these places. Now, for this particular site, I would just say that what had happened is that there were lakes in the ridges, in the higher mountain ranges, like in this instance, there was Lamayuru Paleolake. This is at around 4,500 meters above sea level. And it existed between 35,000 to 24. Much work has been done by Burbank, Monicot, Kothia, Shukla, and Smith.
We have.
Okay, I'm right. Okay. So what had happened is, there were many phases of lake formations and lake outburst in the valley. And the beauty of the lake sediments is that they have soft sediment deformation structures in there, and which tell us about the seismicity in the area, and these were dated. So the valleys that looked like this, some years back or in the late Quaternary, are the fluvial valleys of today. So this is my last slide. What is seen here is that, putting all the work together, work of our group and the other groups, right from 120 years to the present, what we see that valley aggradation has taken place at MIS5, during 120 to 70 thousand years. And then there was a time of valley incision where the terraces were there, and we still have we don't have much data, like we don't have much datable data, sediments there, but still whatever, till now has come out. And then the upper part, that is, the mid part of MIS3 to present, we've seen aggradation in this area. And the upper reaches of the Indus have a high bulk erosion and lowest denudation, while the middle reaches have a high erosion and moderate, while lower reaches have low erosion and high denudation. So both endogenic and tectonic forces have shaped the geomorphology of the Indus River, and Indus has frequently reorganized itself to attain geomorphic equilibrium. I haven't gone in details to the date, but we see repeated tectonic activity at 72, 50, 35 during the LGM, during 11 to 10 Ka, and the climatically induced activity we see at the Holocene Pleistocene boundary here. And these red are the ones that the dated records of the tectonic event. With this, I end my presentation, and I think I've taken much time. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. There is one question in the chat box, so you can converse with him. And so, okay, so there were 3 presentations already we covered. We moved from the Eastern Himalaya, that is mostly from the northeastern India, to Central Himalaya, then Northwest Himalaya. Now again, I'm taking you back to Northeast Himalaya or Northeast Indian region, and Sandeep Panda is going to present work, Influence of Sea Level Variation on Fluvial Architecture of Brahmaputra Foreland Basin. Dr. Panda,
am I audible?
Yes. Kindly share your screen. Yeah, make it full screen. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandeep, and I am working as a senior research fellow at Wadia Institute of Himalayan Geology under the supervision of Dr. Pradeep Srivastava. The topic of my today's talk is influence of sea level variation on fluvial architecture of Brahmaputra Foreland Basin. So, it is very well documented and well known that Himalayan tectonics and the peripheral bulge are the 2 major forcing factors which fills a large portion of the Ganga plain with Himalaya and Creighton-bound sediment. But is this the same for Brahmaputra Basin? We try to answer this question using the fluvial architecture like alluvial fen, fluvial terraces, and oxbow lakes. We also try to trace the provenance of these alluvial deposits so that we can have an overall idea. We can have an overall idea of the erosional hotspots and its controlling factor. Before going deep into the study, I just want to show you that the controls of the Foreland Basin are primarily, there are 3 controls which are being talked about. One of them is tectonic, another is climate, and the third one is the base level fluctuation. And here you can see in the Ganga and Brahmaputra, comparison of Ganga foreland and Brahmaputra foreland. There is Yamuna mega fan, there is Sarda mega fan, Ganga mega fan, and Kosi mega fan. These are the larger alluvial fans. They are termed as mega fans. While we come to the Brahmaputra foreland basin, the fans are very small and restricted to very few kilometers down from the mountain front. We are very interested that we've identified a relic fan surface at around Kokrajhar region, which we which we focus our study to understand the sedimentation and its control, and to understand the sedimentation in the Brahmaputra foreland basin. Firstly, we try to reconstruct the geomorphology of the study area. Here you can see the modern day river system, which is primarily a braided river system, flows on the T0 surface, while there is another T1 terraces we marked, which has an average elevation of 35 meters from mean sea level, and the gray marked region shows the Paleofen surface, which has an elevation of 55 meters from the mean sea level. While going from top, from apex to the toe of the fan, you can see there is a constant decrease in the slope. We also try to date and date some of the meander scrolls that are present on the T1 surface, and we also try to trace the modern day gravel sand transition zone. So this star mark shows the modern day gravel sand transition zone, which means in the modern case the river does not bring gravels further to this point, but there are gravels in this fan, and some of studies has also reported gravel beds at a depth of 60 meters much further downstream in Bangladesh area, which they have related to the glacial lake outburst floods to taking place in the Tibetan plateau. But we didn't. But we analyzed some of the borehole data from Tejpur and Dibrugarh region, but we didn't find any of the gravel beds to the depth of 120 and 140 meters. So whatever gravel beds have been found in the downstream of this region in Bangladesh has to be supplied by these transverse river systems only. We went to the field and we identified. So why we have chosen this study area? There are three important factors that pushed us to go thoroughly for this area. Is that the distance from the sea level? This location is merely few hundred kilometers away from the sea level. The elevation from the sea level, which is nearly 50 meters, the maximum elevation was recorded to be 50 meters, at around 50 meters, and the detachment from the mountain front. A thing very interest that most of the fans found in Ganga plain are attached to the mountain front, while this fan, which you are going to study, has been detached from the mountain front by a few kilometers. In the field, we identified primarily three phases of deposition. Three phases of deposition, and in each phase there was a proper grains. The sedimental structures were identified, and proper lithophasic identification was done. In phase 1, we identified planar cross-bedded sands, also planar cross-bedded gravels with massive disorganized gravels. In phase 2, we identified seated gravels with some cross-bedded sand lenses, while in phase 3, we identified fine bioturbidated clay silt lithofacies and along with occasional occurrence of laminated sand and silty clay. So these are the section that shows the complete three phases of the fan formation. In the phase 1, you can see there are the cross-bedded gravels, cross-bedded sand, and when massive class-supported gravels are there. So which this three lithophases association generally corresponds to the bar aggradation, while the GH, SR and SL lithophases association corresponds to the meandering channel system. The topmost faces, that is fine sand and fine laminated sand and massive clay silt faces, they generally correspond to the floodplain lithophases or inactive plain faces deposits. This diagram shows the schematic sketch of this section. Here you can see there are three phases of the formation. The phase one consists of three individual units of cross-bedded sand and cross-bedded gravel units, which is bounded by a fourth order bounding surface, which marks the reactivation of the channel. That means the after this the channel again becomes activated, and the phase 2 deposition begins, which is again bounded by a fourth order erosional surface. And the top there is a 1.5 meter thick reddish bioturbinated clay silt lithophasis was deposited. This marks the end of the channel bar aggradation, and the top of the bar surface forms a fifth order surface, after which the channel avulses and lets its courses. So this is how the fen was the sedimentation in the fen took place. We also tried to build the vertical and vertical and lateral lithologs, and dated different samples with the help of OSL chronology. And here you can see that all sections primarily have three distinct phases of formation, while the lowermost phase, that is a cross-bedded gravel and cross-bedded sand, corresponds to an age of 28, 23, 22 and 25K, that is near about the LGM time, while the middle unit corresponds to somewhere about 17, 18 to 14K, 13K, and the top unit corresponds to 6 to nearly 6 to 5 765K. So one interesting thing that we can see from this figure is that from apex to toe of the fan, the thickness of the fine deposits of the
Sandeep,
topmost,
1 minute more.
this has been increasing constantly. So we try to plot these OSL edges along the sea level fluctuation curve and see how the sea level fluctuation has an impact on the formation of the litho units, and the results I will be discussing in the next slide. We also try to trace the provenances using strontium neodymium isotopic composition, and we found that the phase 1 and phase 2 have nearly equal contribution from higher Himalaya and lesser Himalaya, while the younger sediments have more contribution from the higher Himalayans. So in final conclusion, what we have, that we propose a model that during the LGM time scale, there was a nearly 110 meter drop in the sea level, which might be associated with the steep upward gradient of the Bay of Bengal, that caused the increase in the channel gradient all across the Brahmaputra floodplain, and this in terms pushed the gravel sand transition zone or the fan much further into the much further downstream. Between 17 to 9K, there was a constant rise in sea level, which and there is also increase in the rainfall intensity along with the vegetation cover, which ultimately this resulted in high discharge and lesser sediment supply. So the river starts meandering, and seated gravel deposits were formed. Just at 8 to 3K, during 8 to 3K, that there was so 30 seconds, sir. Okay, at 3K, there was a rise in sea level has been reported, which limited the gravels to the apex of the fan. And at around 3 to 1K, there has been reported an decrease in the sea level, which caused the incision and the detachment of the fan from the mountain front. And the present day, just after the little ice age, with increase in rainfall, the channels become braided and form the modern day scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep, for the nice talk. And now we don't have Mr. Siddharth because due to some problem, he's not going to present his talk. So we are moving to next talk. In fact, the last talk of the session by Pujarini Samal. And she is going to present a multi-proxy sedimentary record of last 2.6 K climate and vegetation from the Mahanadi River Delta, east coast of India. Pujarini, are you there?
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, please present your screen.
Yes. Is it visible, sir?
No, not yet. You have to share your screen.
Sorry, sir.
It's not yet shared. In the bottom, yeah. This now coming. Yeah, it's visible now. Okay, thank you. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Pujarini Samal, working on currently pursuing my PhD at Annamalai University, working under the supervision of Dr. S.R. Singara Subramanian and under the co-supervision of Dr. Jyoti Srivastav at Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleoscience. Today, I'd like to present on my topic a multi-proxy sedimentary record of last 2.6 Ka climate and vegetation from Mahanadi Delta, east coast of India. As we all know, the river delta is a landform created by the deposition of river sediments as the flow leaves its mouth and enters into the slow-moving or stagnant water that may be ocean, sea, estuary, or reservoir. Being the transition zone between the marine and terrestrial environment, it retains all the fingerprints of human civilization. So the paleoclimatic study of the last millennia at the delta site may provide us a precise knowledge about the natural and anthropogenic factors of climate change. Going into the study area, Baldia is located at the lower deltaic part of the Mahanadi River Delta, which is of middle to late Holocene age. To achieve the objectives of our study, in the present study, we propose a multi-proxy approach to identify the recent global climatic variability from Iron Age cold period to Little Ice Age and its response to the in the deltaic environment, and to identify the source rock type of the sediments. We have collected a 2.8 meter train sample, and the samples were subsampled at a regular interval of 10 centimeter, and the samples were analyzed at Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleoscience for the palynological study, geochemical analysis, and to identify the clay mineral assemblages. Based on the organic carbon presence, 3 selected samples were sent to Physical Research Laboratory for the AMS to getting the AMS radiocarbon dates. We got 3 AMS radiocarbon dates at 1.1 meter depth. We got 1181 calendar year BP. At 1.5 meter depth, we got 1870 calendar year BP, and at 1.9 meter depth, the date has come as 2105 calendar year BP. So the sedimentation rate from 1181 Calier BP to 1870 Calier BP was estimated as 0.06 centimeter per year, and from 1870 Calier BP to 2105 Calier BP, it has increased to 0.15 centimeter per year. So from the up to the top and the bottom, we have extrapolated the age to know the global climatic events in between that. The source rock identification. The previous study has suggested that the Mahanadi River sediments is of granite composition, which is a part of peninsular Nisi complex. But in our study, to infer the source rock composition, we plotted lanthanum, scandium, and thorium ternary plot, where we found 2 clusters for our analyzed sediments. The S1 cluster falls in a close proximity to the granite composition of APGC, that is Peninsula Nisi Complex, and S2 towards the Eastern Ghat Granulate Belt. Coming to the paleoclimatic reconstruction, the pollen assemblages is showing a marked dominance in herbaceous taxa and high percentage of mangrove associates, that is Exocaria and Abyssinia, during 2600 to 2100 Callier BP. The increased aridity index and a gradual decrease in moisture index indicate a dry climate during this period. The presence of high elite and low kaolinite value also indicating a dry and arid climate. The trend in the carbonate records of Lunar Lake also suggest a lower degree of precipitation across the central India. So the overall proxy records of this period from 2600 to 2100 Callier BP suggest a dry climate at the study site, which may be attributed to Iron Age coal period. During 2100 to 1800 Callier BP, higher percentage of mangrove taxa, abundance of plant species, especially Barringtonia and Miliaceae, suggest a strengthened monsoon condition at the study site. Higher percentage of freshwater algae, pseudocyeae and fungal spore also attributes to high freshwater discharge. Higher value in the ratio of secondary mineral versus primary mineral, and increasing trend in the in all the weathering indices like chemical index of alteration, plagioclase index of alteration, and a higher values in RB versus SR ratio indicate an intense weathering condition during this period. The highest peak in the moisture index confirms the onset of Roman warm period in 2046 Callier BP. During 1870 to 1350 Callier BP, a relative decline in the vegetation cover, excess of Abyssinia indicate a relatively drier event, but surprisingly there is no remarkable decrease in the CIA and PIA values. However, the ratio of secondary versus primary clay mineral is showing a decline trend, suggesting a relatively drier period during dark age cold period. During 1350 to 800 Callier BP, the dominance of true mangroves like Soneraceae, presence of Xylocarpus, which is an aquatic taxa, high concentration of Miliaceae and Pseudocyeae indicate a more freshwater input into the study site. The ratio of clay mineral is also showing a increasing trend, which indicating an intense weathering at the study site. However, the RB versus SR value and with the vegetation indices is showing a shift from relatively humid climate during the early period to relatively drier climate during the latter part. Proxy records from Lunar Lake and Godavari River indicate an overall decline in southwest monsoon precipitation during medieval climatic anomaly across the central India. Again, the lower abundance of Globigerina bulloids suggests a reduced upwelling at a big tropospheric low-level circulation across the Arabian Sea during medieval climatic anomaly. So, comparing all region proxy records, other region proxy records, and from the trend of our proxy records, this period may be attributed to medieval climatic anomaly. During 800 to 300 Callier BP, there is a decline in all plant diversity, plant species. Gradual decline in fungal spore reveals a less precipitation at the study site. All the weathering proxies are showing, yes, are showing a sharp fall, indicating a less chemical weathering in the with less precipitation. Dominance of primary clay, especially elite, indicate a more physical erosion during dry climate. However, lack in plant abundance in palynological records may arise from poor preservation of pollen in sand-dominated sediments. After 320 Callier BP, the appearance of herbaceous taxa and increase in fungal spore suggests the onset of warming period at the study site. These are the concluding remarks of my study. The source of composition could be the mixing of both the formation, that is from Peninsula Nisi Complex and Eastern Ghat Granulate Belt. During Iron Age cold period, the study region experienced a dry and arid climate, which is evidenced by the high concentration of herbaceous taxa and inclined trend in heredity index. At the height of worm and worm period, a shift towards warm and humid climate occurred, which is verified by the increase in rainfall intensity and peak in the moisture index. Increased aridity climate during dark age cold period and medieval climatic anomaly is confirmed by the low clastic input to the study site, as well as the dominance in the herbaceous taxa. During little ice age, the sharp fall in all the weathering parameters as well as a minimum value of RB versus SR suggests a dry and arid climate with high physical erosion. The reappearance of herbaceous taxa after 322 Cal BP indicates the onset of recent warming period at the study site. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Pujarini. Well, I thank you all 5 presenters who presented their talks in this session of Quaternary Landscape Evolution. Now I'm going to invite Dr. Anup Ambili to kindly summarize the session.
Thank you,
Anup,
Dr.
please.
Sandosh. So this session had 5 talks, and the presenters has discussed the interaction of climate, tectonics, and surface processes in the Himalayan region, and most importantly, Northwest and Central Himalayas. Additional topics such as sea level variation has also been touched upon. And lastly, the multi-proxy record of last 3,000 years were generated from the Mahanadi River Delta for climate and vegetation reconstruction. I believe that this new data set will provide new insights on the Earth surface process and the controlling factors. And I request Dr. Vimal to conclude this session. Yeah.
Thank you, Anup, and thank you, Dr. Santosh. I think it was a wonderful session, and we are extremely sorry. We wanted to hear more from Dr. Benita, a wonderful review of Ladakh's valley development, but sure, we will get some time. We were bounded by this time, and also Sandeep made a very nice presentation. We also wanted to hear more from him in detail, but we will get more time. And thank you all. I think we have still managed to finish in time, and I thank you all for attending this session. And now I hand it over to Dr. Benita Bhatia.
Okay, thank you, Vimal. Thank you, Santosh, and thank you, Anup, for moderating the session so well. Thank you, participants, and thank you, listeners who are here with us. We break for 25 minutes now because we have to start the poster session at 1:30. And the poster session will again cover the sessions of humans in Quaternary, fossils in Quaternary, and Quaternary landscape evolution. The poster session has 13 posters, and that would, just after the poster session, we have yet another interesting session on Quaternary geology, science, philosophy, management, and policy. That would be moderated by Dr. P. Mortikai, and I'm happy to announce that INQUA President Professor Thijs van Kopschaften would be here with us, along with Francisco, President INQUA Roma, and Professor Singhvi is also there. So I would request all of you to be there because, we do science. We need to know what management and how policies would take this science in the future for the betterment of society. And Pradeep is here. Pradeep, you want to say something? Add on to something?
No, I don't want to add anything. Just, we all should get together in the concluding session at least. That would be much of a benefit because Francisco will be talking about INQUA Roma, where many of us would be interested going and joining that INQUA. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody. Thanks once again. And the link is open, but recording would be off, and we meet at 1:30 sharp. Who's the moderator? Dr. Rajni Panchang and Dr. Pinky Bisht would be looking after the session, post session. Thank you. Bye for now.